When you do the same thing 3 times, there are a couple of things that you begin to understand. Well, more like after 3 times, you'd have to be incredibly stupid not to understand those things. I may be a little stupid, but not that stupid.
Just what nonsense are you talking about?
There's probably a pattern here, some kind of inevitability. No matter how many times you do something over, at least a few things will never change. Or at least there's some sort of strong force that tries to keep things that way. For example,
All 3 times, Satella had her badge stolen by Felt. The first and second times, Elsa caused a bloodbath. Even the third time around, it had probably happened as well, unrelated to Subaru's death.
I don't know if I can win against Elsa. I still don't know. But there is one thing I do know.
If on the fourth time around Subaru didn't do something, Felt and Ram would be killed by Elsa. It was also unavoidable for Elsa and Satella to fight as well.
So what if those two died? One's a bit of a villain who deals in stolen goods, and the other one is a bold girl who tries to overcharge for those stolen goods without any sense of shame or regret. Both of them were criminals, so wouldn't it be better off if they were gone? But still. Well, I guess I really am a product of the modern age. Even though I always used to make fun of people like this when I sat in front of a computer screen.
Subaru used to act as if he thought pity and compassion were stupid. It wasn't that he thought of it as an act, however. He just thought of himself as someone who didn't really care all that much. That way, no matter what situation he found himself in, he was able to keep himself from getting too emotional about it. It didn't matter to him if a few people he knew died. At least, that's how he used to think.
But I hate it. It feels terrible. I know those two are far from being saints, but knowing that someone you know is going to be killed, that's just impossible to ignore.
In the past, when he acted uncaring, it really must have been nothing more than an act. It was the product of his interactions happening in a virtual world. Now that he had to deal with these heavy issues in real life, there was a whole different level of weight to them. But at the same time, Subaru thought he was shallow for changing one of his core beliefs about life, just as soon as things got hard.
And of course there's also Satella, that girl. I just can't just abandon her like that.
After calling her by that name and seeing her reaction, Subaru realized that Satella was a fake name. When he thought back to the first time around, she didn't seem to be too fond of being called by that name. Then with the third time, it was painfully clear. In other words, that meant that she didn't trust him enough when she told him that name. Subaru hadn't built up enough relationship points with her, so at one of the scenario forks he failed the test for getting her real name.
In that case, I guess I'll just have to work hard enough for her to actually give me her real name this time.
Subaru stretched and twisted his body around, popping several joints as he got himself pumped up. The store owner looked on at Subaru's strange actions with a surprised look on his face.
There's just some times where a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Right, old man?
Yeah, that's exactly the way it is. Totally agree. So go on and get out of here.
Subaru thought that he had struck a good pose and said that line pretty well, but given the store owner's terribly monotonic reaction, he could feel his face starting to twitch. Once the annoyed store owner finally pushed him out of the store, he hurried along. After running about 200 meters down the crowded street, he stopped and stood for a moment.
Now, then.
Subaru lifted up his short bangs with his hand and then in exaggerated motions looked this way and that. Then he put his hand out to a nearby wall and leaned against it.
Where do I need to go if I want to meet not Satella?
He said. It wasn't a phrase that inspired confidence about his actions, but he wasn't going to just sit around and wait. Now that Subaru thought of it, most of the circumstances surrounding his and Satella's meeting were coincidence. Both the first time and the third time Subaru had run into Satella in a place not far from this main street, but that was about the only thing in common. At the very least, it would help if Subaru knew when the theft would be taking place.
Just how long was I sitting glumly there in front of that fruit shop?
Subaru felt like it could have been a few minutes, but at the same time, it could easily have been almost an hour.
Should I just wander about and leave everything to chance? Hope that the red string of fate between me and her will bring us together?
Subaru had lifted both of his pinky fingers in front of his face, twisting them around as if they were dowsing rods, while spectators watched on with curious glances. As Subaru continued searching, he realized that he was in a place that he remembered seeing before.
I guess my ties to fate are working pretty well after all.
Subaru said, full of himself, before realizing just where he was. Before he knew it, he had wandered into an alley.
Isn't this the place where I first met Satella?
He felt that it was similar, but he couldn't be sure. Even if this was the exactly same alley as before, There was no guarantee that she would come running down it.
After all, the dead end I was at when I was killed the third time was in a completely different place.
Even if it was certain that not Satella would get her badge stolen by Felt every time, the route that they took after that would differ depending on the circumstances. It was possible that the first and second times the route they took was the same, but the third time, because of Subaru's interference, fate must have shifted slightly. After thinking that far, Subaru realized just how shallow his thinking was. If he entered this familiar alley, it was possible he would run into Felt and not Satella. However, that also meant meeting another set of people as well. In other words,
I really am tired of looking at your faces, dumb, dumber, and dumbest,
said Subaru wearily as he turned around and saw the same three thugs blocking his path out of the alley. Their looks, their clothes, their faces, everything was the same. Both their goals and their equipment must be the same as well. Subaru was making absolutely no progress at all. Subaru supposed that made sense though. After all, he was just walking around the same places as before.
Why these guys when I have so much trouble finding not Satella and Puck?
The reason Subaru was having trouble meeting up with Satella was that her actions were probably affected by several other random factors besides Subaru. However, the reason that Subaru kept encountering Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest was probably because they had picked him out for a target early on. That's why, even if he picked a different alley, he would always run into these guys. Their event was unavoidable.
Even if I've come up with a splendid theory as to why all of this is happening, it doesn't make me any happier. So what do you want with me, guys?
Just what is this fool mumbling about? He's probably just too clueless to understand what's going on. How about we show him?
Dumb and Dumber's conversation was the same as ever, and that made Subaru feel even lousier about the whole thing. However, this didn't mean that he could let his guard down. The bar set for the conditions necessary to clear the Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest event wasn't very high, but there wasn't a 100% chance that Subaru would be able to make it out of this alley. After all, they were the ones who had caused his death the third time around. As he was thinking about that, Subaru's thoughts drifted to what happened the last time, just as he was dying. As he lay dying, he was able to pick up some of the sounds of what was happening. Subaru tried to remember the final conversation that Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest were having. What were they afraid of? There was a word that they said. Subaru thought he should be able to remember it, and it was
Guards.
Hearing Subaru's sudden and unexpected SOS, Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest jumped. The silence of the alley was broken and the volume of Subaru's yell was sure to have reached the main street. With all of Subaru's training in kendo, his sense of shame about suddenly yelling out was long gone. Additionally, Subaru, who realized at this point in his life what a loser he was, wasn't one to let his pride be hurt by suddenly calling for help.
Someone please call some men over here.
What? Are you kidding me? You're really going to start calling for help? Who does that? In this sort of situation, you're supposed to listen to us if you want to avoid getting hurt. You're just going to ignore us and call for help? That's not normal.
What? Don't give me that's not normal. In what world is this not normal? Oh, it can't be. You're not saying that you're trying to do something where it'd be trouble if I called out, are you? Oh my God!
Shut up. You know what we mean.
I'm not listening. I can't hear you through that thick wall of insincerity. Police!
Subaru continued to yell and keep the thugs on their toes, but on the inside he was breaking out into a cold sweat. As Subaru had been breathing his last during his third time around, just as his consciousness was leaving him, Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest had said the words guards and run. In other words, in this world there was an organization that functioned like a police force. That information led Subaru to the new option, call for help. Even he thought it was a pretty lame tactic. But unfortunately, Subaru didn't seem to get a very encouraging reaction from the crowd out on the main street.
Well, looks like that didn't work.
Threatening us like that, I almost got a little bit scared there, ma'am. Just a little bit. Not even a little bit. Only a tiny bit.
In unison, Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest proceeded to deny how pathetic they were, in about the most pathetic way possible. As the men tried to regain control of the situation, after looking at each other and nodding, each of them took out their weapons. One took out a knife, one took out a rusty hand axe, and finally the last one.
Why are you the only one without a weapon? What? Didn't you have the money to buy something?
Shut up! I'm stronger without a weapon. I'll beat you to death, you little punk.
Man, I would have loved to show you all what happened to you guys the second time around.
Remembering how he had landed that perfect suplex, Subaru wanted to give himself another pat on the back, but Zero by Tape Nagatsuki. Want to create an audiobook like this yourself? Try rtail.ai. Now sit back and enjoy the story.
At the same time, he realized that he was in a pretty bad spot right now. It was looking more and more like Subaru wasn't going to make it out of this. Can't you guys let me off easy? I'm not a big fan of pain. After going through the experience 3 times already, Subaru knew that he was never going to get used to dying. To top it all off, the cause of death in all 3 instances was because of wounds inflicted by a blade. The sharp pain that went along with those wounds always felt fresh and was always a shock, as if his nerves were being whittled away. Subaru didn't want to experience that kind of death again, and that was not all. Just because I've been returned by death a few times already, there's no guarantee that it will happen this time as well. Subaru had no reason to think his return by death had a limitless number of uses. Subaru didn't notice a number on his body or anything, but as the saying goes, Buddha only has the patience to save you 3 times. If what was happening to Subaru was a gift of the Buddha's good graces, Subaru had already used up all of his continues. If I die here, my life in this new world may really come to an end. I guess my best bet is to try to run away even if I get injured in the process. The weapon that looked the most able to inflict a mortal wound was, of course, the tried and true knife. The hand axe really did have a lot of rust, so if Subaru blocked himself with his convenience store bag, he'd get away with a blunt hit rather than being cut. Of course, the weaponless guy was a safe bet, so Subaru focused all of his attention on Dumber, the one with the knife, and played through his escape in his head. 3, 2,
That's enough.
That voice suddenly and clearly cut right through the dry tension of the alley. In the voice's gallant tone, there was no sense of hesitation and no ounce of mercy. Just listening to the voice was enough to be overpowered by its existence, and it was a perfect match for carrying the voice's owner's intentions. Subaru lifted up his head, and Dumber, and Dumbest turned around. In front of them was a young man. What stood out about his appearance more than anything else was his flaming red hair. Underneath it were sparkling blue eyes that could only be described as daring. His extraordinary good looks helped magnify his sense of gallantry, and with one glance you could tell that this young man was a cut above the rest. He was slender and tall and wore well-made black clothes. And while it did not have elaborate decor, around his waist he also wore a knight's sword, which endued him with an inordinately intimidating air.
No matter what the circumstances are, I will not allow you to perpetrate any more violence against that young man. That is enough.
As the young man said this, he walked straight past Dumber and Dumbest and got between them and Subaru. Subaru was at a loss for words at the young man's bold attitude, but Dumbers, and Dumbest reactions were different. All of the thugs' faces went pale, and with quivering lips they pointed at the young man.
That burning red hair and sky blue eyes, plus that knight's sword sheath engraved with the image of dragon's claws. It can't be...
The thugs stared on in disbelief.
Reinhard? Are you the master swordsman, Reinhard?
Well, I suppose I don't have to waste time introducing myself. Although I am not fond of that title everyone gives me. It's still too heavy for me.
The man called Reinhard muttered with a tinge of self-deprecation in his voice. But the light in his eyes was unwavering. The thugs, overpowered by the young man's stare, took one step back. They looked at each other as if trying to determine the best time to escape.
If you're planning on running away, I'll let you off this time. Just head back out toward the main street. However, if you plan on being stubborn, you will have to deal with me.
Reinhard put his hand on the hilt of his sword and motioned to Subaru behind him with his chin.
We're down 3 against 2. They have the advantage on us in numbers. I'm not sure if the little help I can give will be enough to make a difference, but I will do the best I can, on my honor as a knight.
What? Are you kidding me? This isn't even a contest.
After hearing what Reinhard had said, Dumber, and Dumbest were completely out of sorts. They scattered like baby spiders, forgetting to even hide their weapons as they ran out onto the main street. Unlike the first time around, none of them threw any insults as they ran. That was a testament to the difference in scale between them and this young man. As soon as the thugs left the alley, the heightened tension that had permeated it immediately faded away. Realizing that this was something the young man did purposefully, Subaru was again at a loss for words.
For you to do all of that and still keep so cool, it's like you and I aren't of the same species. The level of human purity in his face, his voice, his stance, and actions were all way too high. If his personality and upbringing were also the same way, if he wasn't doing something corrupt on the side, there was no way it all could balance out.
Putting his jealousy aside, Subaru let out a flat-sounding laugh and then prostrated himself on the ground.
You have saved my life, and I, Subaru Natsuki, am forever grateful. I must say that I am impressed with both your honorable intentions and bravery.
You're giving me too much credit. It was because their advantage of 3 against 1 fell to 3 against 2 that they became unsure of themselves. It would have been different if it was only me against them.
No, given how scared they were of you, even if it were 10 against 1, or even 100 against 1, I still think they would have run away. But what's with your gallantry stats? You're like a saint, both in body and mind. You're so brilliant, I think I'm going to go blind. To be honest, there was such a difference in their looks, Subaru really didn't want to be standing next to him. Subaru examined Reinhardt again, but the more he looked at him, the more he thought that this beautiful young man had to have been chosen by God. However, he did not look like he was a guard. I can just call you by your name, Mr. Reinhardt, right?
I don't need the Mr. Tig. You don't have to be so formal, Subaru.
Well, we're pretty close all of a sudden, huh? Anyway, thanks again, Reinhardt. You're the only one who came running when I called. I have to say it makes me feel a bit lonely that no one else seemed to care.
Given how many people were out walking on the main street, it wasn't possible that Reinhardt was the only person who heard Subaru call out. But as Subaru complained, Reinhardt lowered his eyes slightly.
I don't really want to say this, but I think I can understand them. For the majority of people, the risk of interfering when thugs like those are involved is too great. You were right to call for guards.
The way you're saying that, are you a guard, Reinhardt? You don't look like one at all.
I get that a lot. I am off duty today, so I'm not wearing my uniform, and even I know that the way I look, I'm lacking the sternness of an authority figure.
Reinhardt said, spreading both his arms, but Subaru thought differently. The biggest reason that Reinhardt didn't look like a guard was that he appeared to be far from a lowly, rough sort of idea Subaru had of what a guard should look like.
Now that I think of it, didn't I call you something like Master Swordsman?
My family's position is rather special, you see, so I've got a lot of heavy expectations placed on me. Every day's a battle.
Reinhardt smiled, shrugging his shoulders. Apparently, Reinhardt had a sense of humor as well. Subaru was now completely sure that this guy was the perfect human being. Forget about lamenting to God about the unfairness of it all. At this point, Subaru was just impressed.
By the way, I thought that your hair and clothes, and also your name, are pretty unusual. But where are you from? Why did you come to the capital of Lugunica?
Reinhardt asked, looking down at Subaru and his appearance. Given that Subaru's background was unclear, it seemed to be a pretty natural response for someone who was a guard.
It's a little hard to answer that first question. Last time when I said, a small country to the east, it didn't work, so let me rephrase that. I've come from a place even farther east than here, a place no one has ever seen before, from the ends of the earth.
Finished Subaru with a glint in his smile. Subaru thought that it was a pretty safe answer, but Reinhardt looked surprised.
Farther east than Lugunica. You can't mean beyond the Grand Cascade. Is that supposed to be a joke?
Grand Cascade?
Subaru tilted his head with the unfamiliar term. Cascade, like a waterfall? Subaru, who wasn't familiar with the geography of the surrounding area, had no idea what Reinhardt was talking about. The only places Subaru really knew in this world were the main street alleys, the slums, and the loot cellar.
It doesn't seem like you're trying to fool me or anything, but, well, that's fine. Anyway, it looks certain that you're not from the capital, but you have a reason for being here, right? Right now, Lugunica is not as peaceful as it usually is. It's falling into a state of unrest. Whatever you're here for, I'd be glad to help.
Come on, it's your day off. right? There's no need for you to waste a day off just to help me out. You've really done more than enough already. But I would like to ask you a question, if I could.
Subaru shook his head in response to Reinhardt's offer, but then he raised up a finger as if he suddenly remembered something.
I'm all ears. I'm not a very informed individual, so I'm not sure I can help all that much, though.
Well, it's less of a question and more me asking about a person, so no worries. So anyway, have you seen a silver-haired girl with a white robe walking around in this area?
Natsatella's appearance was one that stood out. Of all of the things about her, the color of her hair and that hawk-embroidered white robe in particular stood out the most. If someone like that was walking around in the capital, there was a good chance that Reinhardt, a guard, had noticed.
A white robe and silver hair.
If I were to add anything, she's extremely beautiful. Also, there's this cat. Well, it's not like she's carrying it around in front of her, but she has one, if that's helpful. If there was someone who was wearing a white robe, had silver hair, and had that cat spirit, then it had to be her. However, the cat was usually hidden away inside her hair, so expecting a sighting that included the cat was hoping for a little too much.
What do you plan on doing when you find her?
Something she lost, or I guess something she's looking for. Anyway, I want to give what she's looking for back to her. Of course, Subaru didn't have it on him right now, and it was even possible that she hadn't had it stolen from her yet, but there was no need to complicate things.
Reinhardt narrowed his eyes at Subaru's response, and then silently thought for a few moments before answering.
Unfortunately, I can't say I've seen anyone like that. If you'd like, though, I don't mind helping you find her.
I can't ask that much of you. It's all right, I'll figure things out on my own.
Subaru lifted up his hand to refuse Reinhardt's request, and then turned to exit the alley and walk along the main street. It was possible that he would run into Natsatella again, like he did the third time around.
If possible, it might be better to catch Felt and keep her from stealing the badge in the first place. Considering what would happen otherwise, Subaru thought that might be the best approach to take. The problem is, considering how fast Felt is, whether I could really catch her or not. In the worst case, I could get some guards to come to the loot cellar, but...
Loot cellar?
Oh, don't worry about that. Forget I said anything. It's just the name of a place an old man I know likes to hang out.
As Reinhardt reacted to his statement, Subaru tried to divert his attention and at the same time rejected the idea of getting guards involved. Even if Subaru brought guards with him, with Elsa as an opponent, there was a good chance that it would only result in more casualties. That's just how superhuman that assassin's skills were.
Well, if all of the guards here were superhuman as well, it might be a different story. Anyway, I guess I should head back to the main street.
Are you going?
Yeah, I am. Thanks again, Reinhardt. I'll have to return the favor one day. Can I meet you again if I go to a guard station or something?
I think so. If you just give my name, they'll know where to find me. I'd love to see you again, so stop by for any reason at all.
Have I really done anything or said anything to raise our relationship score that much? Anyway, if I ever get stuck or lost again, I'll be sure to stop by,
Said Subaru jokingly, waving his hand. Goodbye,
Be careful.
said Reinhardt, as cool and gallant as ever. Pushed on by those words, Subaru was able to exit the alley with absolutely zero damage, all the while not noticing just how much the young man with the blue eyes was sizing him up as he watched him leave. Now that Subaru had made it safely back to the main street, he did his best to look for Natsatella. However, all that he could really do was open his eyes wide and stare at the passing crowd. Using his memories from the third time around, Subaru positioned himself near the fruit store he had become familiar with. The face of the scarred store owner that Subaru could see out of the corner of his eye was very stern.
This time our meeting wasn't exactly the best, was it? But I know that you really are a kind-hearted guy.
Subaru said, giving the villainous-looking shop owner a thumbs up, to which the shop owner turned his face away from, annoyed. Subaru drew his thumbs back feeling unloved, and then returned his gaze to the street. As always, there were tons of people passing by, of all shapes, sizes, and kinds. It had been over 10 minutes since Subaru had started his lookout, and it had already been nearly an hour since he had started his fourth run.
I'm not sure I can trust my sense of time, but it would be strange if the theft hasn't happened yet,
said Subaru to himself, when an anxious thought crossed his mind.
Hey, old man.
What is it, Mr. Penniless?
When the shop owner came out in front of his store and looked at Subaru, he had already given up trying to hide how annoyed he was.
Well, it's true that I am penniless, so I won't deny that, but, old man, I've got something I'd like to ask you. Have you seen any sort of commotion happen around here lately?
You got guts asking me a question without buying anything.
Well, I know that, but last time. Wait!
As Subaru was talking, he realized why the shop owner was in such a bad mood. The first time around, when Subaru and Natsutella had visited the fruit shop together, they had met again with the shop owner's daughter. She hadn't been saved yet this time around.
How could I have forgotten about that? Don't tell me that I have to go find her first.
What are you talking about? Oh, fine, whatever. Look, kiddo, those sort of commotions you're talking about aren't exactly unusual around here.
I'm glad you answered my question, but are you serious?
Now that Subaru thought about it, the loot cellar was filled with things stolen from all over the capital. If there were that many thefts occurring, it spoke volumes about the level of security in the capital.
Does this mean I've completely run out of options?
However, the most recent commotion wasn't the usual fare. Someone was using magic and shot off 2 or 3 blasts of it. Just look.
The shop owner leaned forward and pointed to a stall about 4 spaces to the left. When Subaru followed with his gaze, he saw that right beside that stall was an alleyway, and there were few holes gouged out of the wall leading into it.
Oh, wow.
There were some icicle-shaped things that were used like arrows, and one of them stuck inside that wall. It disappeared immediately afterward, though.
Each of the 4 holes was a little bigger than a quarter. Since they were able to make a hole like that in a stone wall, Subaru shivered to think what would happen if they hit a person.
This magic looks like it's on a different scale from the first time I saw it. I wonder if Natsutella's a little more upset than usual this time. If Subaru approached her without thinking, he might be the one on the receiving end of that magic. Subaru felt a cold sweat form on his brow, but if that's the case, then I was too late this time as well. If the theft had already taken place, it was going to be difficult for Subaru to meet up with Natsutella on his own. In other words, what he should shoot for now was, I need to try to meet up with Felt. If possible, I need to try to catch her before she enters the loot cellar, and then exchange my cell phone for the badge, but given that was a place at which he had already been killed twice, Subaru wanted to avoid the loot cellar as much as he could. If I go too late, then it'll be what happened the first time all over again. However, if I go and meet up with Rom and wait for Felt, then I'll end up repeating what happened the second time around. 2. What was most important was Felt's location. Right now, Felt was probably being chased around the capital by Natsutella. If he could, Subaru wanted to meet up with her before she arrived at the loot cellar. Maybe I could just rely on my return by death and use this time just to gather information? While that seemed like a viable option, Subaru shook his head and quickly rejected that plan. This was something he realized after experiencing death 3 times, but every time it was incredibly painful. He didn't want to experience something like that ever again. Subaru was anxious about relying on his return by death power when he didn't know how or why it worked. Say Subaru decided to throw away this 4th time around by watching things unfold with the intention of dying afterwards so he could reset everything. What if when he did that, his return by death didn't activate because he had run out of the number of times he could use it? No one would be laughing at that end. In the end, I've really got to cling to life as long as I can. Well, I suppose that goes without saying, though.
After making his decision, Subaru twisted around to stretch his body. The shop owner didn't seem too pleased as Subaru did his radio exercises in front of his store, but as Subaru finished and was jogging in place, he waved back at him.
I don't know why you suddenly decided to help me, but thanks, old man.
It's no big deal. Just a little while ago, another penniless person like yourself helped my little girl out, you see?
As he listened to the shop owner's reply, Subaru first was surprised and then burst out laughing. Oh, the power of fate. No matter how troubled this shop owner's little girl was, someone was going to save her. Just knowing that made Subaru feel that it was worth coming here.
All right, I'm really going to get going now. Next time, I'll buy one of your apples for sure.
Well, if you do, you'll be a customer, and I'll welcome ya. Work hard, Mr. Penniless.
The shop owner said in a monotone.
Gotcha. I really am praying that the next time I come back here will be with money in my hands. I tell you,
Said Subaru as he left running. Subaru's destination was the slums, but this time in a different direction from the loot cellar. If he headed toward the loot cellar, he was sure to raise a couple of bad flags, so this time he was going to try a different route.
You're looking for where Phelps lives. If you just take that road over there until it turns into another street, you should be able to find it.
Thanks, you really helped me out, brother.
No problem, brother. You, live strong and take care of yourself out there, okay?
The middle-aged man Subaru was talking to smiled at him weakly as he disappeared behind a creaking door. Throughout their entire conversation, the look of pity on the man's face never once disappeared from his awkward smile. Subaru tightened his fist, happy that his plan was working.
It was a strategy I formed after my experiences from the first and second times in the slums, but I never imagined it would work this well.
Subaru said, shaking the sleeve of his tracksuit, which was caked in dried mud. In order to help him track down Felt, the brilliant plan he'd thought of after arriving at the slums was to make himself look as down and out and destitute as possible. The first time around, when Subaru visited the slums with Natsatella, Subaru had not long before been beaten up by Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest. Because of that, most of the slums' inhabitants had pitied him and been fairly cooperative. The second time, however, when Subaru hadn't taken much damage, the people gave him a comparatively cold reception. The difference was like night and day. So remembering that, Subaru made himself look so bad he had risked overdoing it.
Well, I did step in the poop of who knows what kind of animal after all. Anyway, I think I've pinned down where Felt sleeps, but the problem is whether she'll come back here or not before she goes to the loot cellar. Fortunately, of the 4 people he was able to get information from, all of their answers about the location of Felt's living place matched up. However, Subaru thought the chances of her coming back to it were about 50-50. There was also the possibility that she did not want to risk having her place found out by returning there while she was being chased. Well, sitting around and worrying about it won't help me at all, so let's stop worrying. Okay.
No sense in worrying about things that can't be helped. This is where Subaru's decisiveness shone. As he continued to scrape off more caked mud from his clothes, Subaru dashed off deeper into the slums. It was dark as ever, and there were puddles of who knows what here and there that Subaru had to jump over to avoid. But just as he was doing so, he almost ran right into someone who suddenly appeared. Subaru was able to turn just in time and hit his back against the wall of the alley, giving off a grunt as he lost his breath.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Are you all right?
Don't worry. I'm actually a pretty sturdy fell. Ow!
As he was trying to play himself off as tough, Subaru looked up, and when he realized who he was looking at, his sentence trailed off and ended in a high-pitched squeal. After hearing Subaru's voice like that, the black-haired woman laughed softly.
What a funny guy. Are you sure you're all right?
She said, lifting her hair back behind her ear. Even that simple motion was somehow sexy, and Subaru reaffirmed the belief inside himself that every move this woman made was extremely erotic. She was definitely someone Subaru did not want to meet again. It was the woman who had cut open his abdomen and spilled his guts. Twice. It was Elsa.
You don't have to act so scared. I won't do anything to you.
I'm not scared, okay? Why would you think that?
You smell...
Replied Elsa, seeing past Subaru's empty attempts to seem tough as she slowly narrowed her eyes as part of the beautiful smile.
Smell? Thought Subaru, confused, but Elsa just breathed in through her beautifully formed nose.
When people are afraid, they smell afraid. Right now you are afraid, and also angry, it seems. At me.
Elsa seemed to be having fun revealing what Subaru was thinking as she looked up at him. Subaru answered with silence and a false smile, taking deep breaths and doing his best to control the quickening pace of his heart. As Subaru went silent, Elsa narrowed her eyes like a snake, while Subaru felt pinned down by her stare. At the very least, he would not be so weak as to look away. Elsa licked her lips in response to Subaru's empty display of strength.
I can't say I'm not curious, but fine. I can't risk causing a fuss right now.
That doesn't sound very nice. If you scare people too much, your beauty's going to be put to waste, you know?
Well, don't you have a way with words. If you could better hide the animosity you have for me, I might have been impressed.
Elsa took her finger and gently pushed on his forehead, and Subaru's frozen body loosened up. As Subaru gasped and heaved, trying to get his breath back, Elsa put her finger to her lips.
Well then, I'll be going now. I have a feeling we'll meet again.
If the next time we meet is in a bright place with lots of people around, I'll be able to relax, too,
Said Subaru cynically, but it was all he could do just to get that out. Elsa gave a longing smile as if she didn't want to leave Subaru just yet, but turned back around, with her black robe fluttering as she melted back into the darkness. After Subaru watched Elsa literally vanish from sight, he leaned up against the wall, feeling like he had run a mile.
I definitely didn't expect to run into her again just yet. I guess she was just wandering around the area before she went to the loot cellar. At the unexpected encounter with the final boss, Subaru felt as though his spirit was about to break. In terms of how mentally prepared he was to deal with either, meeting Elsa had much more of an impact on him than meeting Natsuki. Subaru prayed that this was the last time he was going to have to see Elsa. I think that Felt's place is just farther down ahead, but Elsa couldn't have found Felt and already wreaked havoc, could she? She was a deranged psycho who derived pleasure from cutting open people's stomachs. It was not unthinkable that she would have slaughtered 2 or 3 people just to kill time. Plus, with this being the deepest part of the slums, Subaru had a bad feeling about what he might find. It's probably all right. I didn't see or smell any blood, I think.
Given the stench of rotten garbage that filled the alley, it would be impossible to discern the smell of blood, and it was so dark that Subaru wasn't sure he'd be able to see traces of blood if they were there. But it was probably okay. Surely it was. So Subaru hoped at least. About 5 minutes after his encounter with Elsa, Subaru reached a dilapidated shack.
With the information I was given, I think this is it, but does this really count as a living space?
Said Subaru, confused as he stood in front of the wooden plank that was serving as a door to the shack. The inside of the shack was about the size of 2 portable toilets, the kind used at construction sites. It was as though someone took the phrase, "You only need half a tatami mat for standing and a full one for sleeping," to heart.
Well, I suppose if it's just a place to sleep, then it fits the description. However, the thought that such a small girl was living in a place like this made Subaru feel pity for her. He supposed he could forgive her for being so obsessed with money. So she's living out her life here, huddling her already small body into an even smaller space. I guess it's no surprise she'd turn out as twisted as she is. Ah, how pitiable is she?
Oh, come on! It's not that bad. Just who do you think you are, kid? Belittling my place.
Just as Subaru was entering his pitying mode, he heard a voice behind him and turned around. There in front of him, glaring at him, was the little blonde figure of Felt. The way she looked was not particularly different from the other times they had met. If anything, she looked a little dirtier than before, but that seemed like the result of her getaway being quite a bit more rough on her than last time.
What's with you? Looking at me like that with those pitying eyes? You underestimating me just because I'm a girl and just a little bit filthy?
I think you're reading the wrong emotion there, but I'm just glad I found you.
While Felt didn't even try to hide how irritated she was, Subaru subconsciously relaxed his shoulders in a sense of relief. Subaru was genuinely happy to meet up with her again. He was worried about what might have happened after his near-miss incident with Elsa, but in the end, things seemed to be looking for the better, rather than the worse.
Oh, so you're a customer.
She breathed out her nose, pleased with herself.
The fact that you came here means you've got business with me, right? From the way you look, it's clear that you're not from around here.
Oh, you're quick to see that I'm not really one of you. You've got good eyes there.
People around here would at least take a little bit more care about the way they look. You're trying way too hard. Plus, the way you're trying to fool us with that dirty trick of yours, you look like you're even worse a person than I am.
As always, this girl really knows how to be insulting, doesn't she? Subaru thought, quickly wanting to take back everything he'd said about pitying her.
So, what do you want? If you want something stolen, I'll need the money first. Depending on who the target is, I may ask for more later, though.
If I want something stolen, huh? This is quite a business you're running here. Are you really that proud of your thievery?
It's called making a living. If I don't do this, I'd have to sell my body. Anyway, so what's it going to be? Or do you have some other business for me? Depending on your answer...
said Felt, quickly moving her fingers as if showing off her dexterity. In her hand was a small knife that appeared as suddenly as if it had been summoned by magic. It was clear that she meant to show that she could defend herself. If Subaru had to fight Felt, given both her dexterity and the fact that she had a knife, he had no chance of winning. But Subaru had no intention of fighting. He lifted up his pointer finger and shook it, left and right while clicking his tongue as Felt continued to be on guard.
I only have one item of business to discuss with you. I would like to buy from you that badge you stole.
Having come this far, Subaru thought that being indirect or trying to dodge the topic would just worsen Felt's impression of him. There was also the fact that Elsa was still wandering around the area, so Subaru wanted to dive right into negotiations. However, Felt put her hand over her chest where it was likely she was holding the badge.
How do you know that I stole a badge? The only person who should know that is the one who hired me, and I only stole it just a little while ago. This is way too quick a response for you to have just heard about it on the street.
When you put it that way, yeah, that's a good point. That was too careless, even for me, right?
You really need to do a better job of hiding your intent, kid. A little taunt like that and you're already spilling the beans?
As Subaru held his head in his hands at his mistake, Felt looked as though she had lost the heart to keep up her hostility. Felt dropped to her knees so that she was eye level with Subaru.
So you want to buy this badge off me, huh? What are you trying to do? You can't be on the same side as that woman, right? Is she your rival or something?
More like my arch enemy, maybe? Like how you'd feel if she killed your parents. Or rather, if she killed you.
What are you talking about? Well, whatever. I don't really care about that.
As Subaru was trying to figure out how he was going to talk his way out of this one, Felt just laughed. She then took the dragon-adorned badge out from her breast pocket and waved it in front of Subaru.
I'll sell this to whoever can offer me a higher price, even if there's a chance that woman'll be angry if I break off our deal.
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility she'll just snap, but anyway, I'm just talking to myself. You can ignore me.
Subaru cleared his throat and put on a serious face.
So does this mean you'll hear me out?
Only if it looks like there's money in it for me. That's obvious, right?
Sounds good to me. I've prepared an item that is worth more than 20 blessed gold coins, and I would like to buy your badge with it.
Felt's ears perked up and her red eyes narrowed like a cat's. It looked as though she was trying not to appear shaken, but if she had a tail, it would be twitching back and forth, so Subaru could not help but smile.
Ha! I see! That's quite a price! It looks like my hard work's finally gonna pay off. But unfortunately for you, your rival has already offered me the same amount. You know.
Cut the crap. The deal was for 10 blessed gold coins, right? You get too greedy and you'll die. No, like, seriously.
In actuality, it was pretty clear that that was why she died the first time. 'Cause of death. Greed. With Subaru having gotten the price right, Felt must have thought that she couldn't play it off anymore. After staring wide-eyed at him for a few moments, Felt lightly scratched the side of her head.
What, you know that much too? Yeah, okay. The deal was for 10 blessed gold coins. But you know, if I tell the person who hired me that another offer was made, she might counter-offer with more, you know?
That one's not a lie, you know? Felt, the 13 or 14-year-old, added, curling the edges of her mouth.
You really are sly, aren't you? I'd like to say just give it up and take the deal, but I don't suppose you'd listen to me, huh?
Of course not. Plus, I'm not sure I can trust you. My ears didn't miss a word you said. You didn't say you brought 20 blessed gold coins, but only something worth that much. Isn't this a little unfair? With me knowing nothing about what you have got up your sleeves, but you knowing all about me?
I think it's more of a matter of how much you could prepare that really matters in negotiations, but it is true that without showing you this first, we're not going to get anywhere.
Subaru wanted to avoid having Felt sulk too much and wasting time, so he took his key item for the negotiations, his cell phone, out of his breast pocket. Upon seeing the small device, Felt raised her eyebrows a little bit, but that was it. As always, she didn't respond to anything unless it was clear that it would lead her to money.
20 blessed gold coins for this thing. It only looks like a hand mirror to me.
This is one of those immensely popular Mida. It can take a slice of time and freeze it, saving it away.
Subaru turned on the continuous shooting mode. The bright light flashed through the alley and showered Felt with light.
Whoa! Who
she said, in a rare show of girliness as she reacted. Felt looked as though she was about to complain, but Subaru quickly showed her the cell phone screen.
This is the power of this Misha. Using it, you can leave behind a clear image. Another thing to add is that this is a very rare item. This is the only one like it in the entire world. How about that?
Subaru had gotten used to explaining the cell phone's function at this point, and when he finished, Felt went, and looked carefully at the cell phone in Subaru's hands before nodding in agreement.
It doesn't seem like you're lying, but this is me. You said a clear image, but I think I'm quite a bit better looking than this.
If you weren't in such a terrible environment and eating better, and while it may contribute to what you might think of as shrewd business sense, if you could rid yourself of that sly, dirty personality of yours, I'd say there's hope for you. It's really just a matter of how you're dressed up.
If we're talking about choosing the right words to say, you have no talent when it comes to holding a conversation, do you? Gee.
While Subaru might have scored himself a bit of irritation from that last statement, things were going well overall. However, one of the strong points of the people who lived in the slums was that they never easily agreed to anything.
I'll accept that this thing you have is rare, but I'm still not sure. I believe you when you say it's worth 20 blessed gold coins. I'm not such an airhead that I'll just take you at your word.
Well, that's to be expected. I don't mind personally that you've got a spongy brain, but you're right. We need a third party's opinion.
It would have been great if Subaru could have pushed the negotiations through then and there, but he expected that wasn't going to work. The problem was who to use as a third party.
Deep in the slums, there's this place called the Loot Cellar. It's just as the name suggests, but I think that the quickest way will be to ask the weird old man that's there. He's fair when it comes to appraisals. He's very experienced, so I think he won't have a problem, even with this Misha.
I thought this would happen.
Subaru had expected Felt to suggest Rom. It was also her meet-up point with Elsa, as well as a place where she'd have a bodyguard if things went south. Given that an appraising eye was necessary for Subaru's Misha card, there really was no other choice. However, Subaru really wanted to have everything settled before they ended up at the Loot Cellar.
I have no problem with having the old man look at it, but
Are you really going to call him old man without even having met him yet? You may regret it, you know. He's pretty rough with people who don't know how to show respect.
despite that, he seems to be quite doting on a certain foul-mouthed young girl, always giving her milk and all.
Subaru thought about the bald old man who always looked at Felt with calm eyes. From Rom's perspective, it must be like taking care of a granddaughter. But Subaru had no problem with him. It was the place that was the issue.
I don't know what you seem to have a problem with, but if you're in such a hurry, we should go ahead and get going to the Loot Cellar. To be honest, there was something else that I was planning on doing, but...
Planning on doing?
Well, you see, the person I stole this badge from is a lot more persistent than I thought, so I thought I'd try to sabotage her a bit. After all, you give the guys hanging around a little money and they'll do anything for you.
All right, let's get going. Immediately. Right now. Let's go, go, go.
Subaru pushed on Felt's back as she started walking and hurried her along toward the Loot Cellar.
What's with you?
Complained Felt, puffing up her cheeks, but Subaru was proud of himself for being able to avoid as many casualties as he could. A little cash was way too low a price to offer for anyone to stand in not Satella's way when she was in a hurry. If the alternative was getting hit with a block of ice and squirming on the ground, Subaru was sure they'd rather clutch their hungry stomachs instead.
My only condition is that we have the old man take a look, settle the deal quickly, and then get straight out of there.
Why are you in such a hurry, kid? You're all sweaty, you know. Live strong and take care of your...
Everyone seems to say that, but is that like the slogan of the slums?
Subaru had the feeling they should change it from live strong to live rough. As Subaru put that thought behind him, he made his way with Felt to the Loot Cellar for the third time in total. This fourth time around, he would leave immediately. He would dash right out of there even if he had to leave everyone else behind. Having made his decision, Subaru pushed harder on the back of Felt in front of him.
That hurts!
Ow!
Said Subaru as he was kicked. After meeting up with Felt at her shack, Subaru and Felt made their way through the slums toward the Loot Cellar. The space between buildings was very narrow, and it was difficult for sunlight to make it through into the winding alleys. This additional darkness from the shade of the buildings only made the slums seem even drearier. Subaru could feel a dampness underfoot. There were broken bottles of alcoholic drinks and scraps of paper all over the place, and every now and then there was a strong, unpleasant stench that struck the inside of his nose. Whether it was with Felt or not Satella, this was not the kind of place to be walking alone together with a young girl.
Now, this would just be so much better if we were holding hands and in a more beautiful and colorful place.
Cut it out with that disgusting talk. Don't tell me that you're into little girls.
I'm more into older women. You don't have to be so cautious. Come on over here.
Perhaps because Felt had sensed danger from what Subaru had said, she started to pull away, but Subaru called her back. Reluctantly, Felt edged closer.
No funny business, okay? You're the one who's going to be more in trouble if this deal goes south. We clear?
Why can't you just see that I'm doing my best to get this wary little kitten I'm dealing with here to relax, so we can be friends? If you're so against me being friendly, why don't you stop messing around and actually take me to the loot cellar?
How did you?
How did I figure it out? Oh, come on. I'm not that stupid. I mean, I'm not incredibly familiar with this area, but I'm confident in my sense of direction. The way we've been zigzagging around like this, even I'm gonna start to get suspicious,
said Subaru, looking down at Felt, who went silent and shrugging. With Subaru being right on the mark, Felt couldn't help but look away, but Subaru himself was extremely nervous, his heart racing. After all, everything Subaru had just said was mostly a bluff. Subaru had been bothered by the fact that Felt's route didn't quite match up with the way he thought was the right way to get to the loot cellar. But what really caused him to question Felt was the fact that he had seen the same graffiti that was written on the wall twice, though at a distance, in a short period of time. However, at this point, his bluff was all he had to rely on.
I know it's asking too much for you not to doubt me, and from your perspective, what I have to offer probably sounds too good to be true, so I can't blame you for wanting extra time to look me over. You figured all that out, and you're not angry?
Well, I understand that it makes sense for you to doubt me, and I am being unreasonable. However, I will not compromise on time. Please, take me straight to the loot cellar. I'm begging you, please,
said Subaru, raising his hands, pleading. Felt was startled. Her eyes opened wide as she hesitated for a moment, not sure how to react, but she then took her hand and roughed up her blonde hair.
Well, damn, I just don't get you. I don't get you, but I feel like I've got to pay you back for not getting angry at me just now. Fine, I'll take you straight there. I'll just leave the rest of my doubts in Rom's hands.
I don't dislike that attitude of feeling totally free to rely on others, but, well, never mind.
Just as Subaru was about to lecture Felt, he realized what he was about to say and muddied his words. What did Felt really mean when she said she'd leave everything to Rom? Rom treated Felt like she was a cute granddaughter of his, and he felt so strongly about her that he was ready to lay down his life for her. But how did Felt feel about Rom? Subaru didn't want to think that that bald old man, whom he couldn't bring himself to hate, was just being used by her. Felt narrowed her eyes as Subaru suddenly trailed off, but she didn't pry. Instead, having changed her attitude towards Subaru, she led Subaru straight to the loot cellar without taking any detours this time. As Subaru kept after Felt as she trotted on ahead, he thought again about the course of events that would happen once they got to their destination. It was already Subaru's fourth time doing this. He wanted to go the best route he possibly could. As Subaru continued to walk, lost in thought, he saw that Felt had stopped and was glaring at him.
Oh, stop looking down as you walk. You'll get infected by the gloominess around here, you know?
Well, I'd love to keep my head up, but it's not exactly clean and organized down around my feet, so it's dangerous if I don't pay attention. What do you mean infected by the gloominess?
You know exactly what I mean. I'm talking about the attitude of all the losers who live here.
Felt nodded her head to show she was talking about the surrounding area, the slums. The way she spit out her words showed clear animosity and hatred for the place, and Subaru opened his eyes wide.
Losers? Don't you think that's a bit harsh?
How's it harsh? I'm talking about people who languish in this alleyway life and lose the will to even try to get out of here or better themselves some way. I hate losers like that.
Subaru had spent a good amount of time talking with the people who lived here in the slums. It wasn't as though they had fallen so far that words wouldn't reach them. But like Felt said, he couldn't deny that they seemed to be content with life here. Or rather, they seemed to have given up on getting anywhere else. It would be easy to say that that kind of attitude couldn't be helped, but Felt wouldn't accept that answer. In the dim light of the alley, the light from Felt's crimson eyes would not fade one bit.
I have no no intention of living out my whole life here in these slums. If a chance comes my way, I'll cling to it and make it mine. The same goes for this deal now.
So that's why, huh? The second time around, Felt had done everything she could to find weaknesses in and get more out of Elsa and Subaru. It was easy to explain those actions simply by saying she was greedy, but knowing what he did now, Subaru thought he could understand why Felt was so persistent. Felt wanted to leave the slums, to break out of the circumstances of her orphaned childhood. At the root of all her actions was a desire for something more. So, with 20 blessed gold coins, will that dream of yours come true?
It'll definitely be closer to coming true, and if I were going alone, it might just be enough. But I don't know.
Felt muttered.
If you were going alone?
Subaru's sharp ears wouldn't let that one slip, and he raised his eyebrows in response. Felt realized her mistake, clicked her tongue, and looked away.
It's nothing. We're not so friendly that I'm going to talk about. Why am I being so talkative today in the first place?
Said Felt, clearly regretting the slip of her tongue.
Maybe you're loosening up a little because your goal's in sight?
Replied Subaru, as he felt himself grinning. Felt said if she were going alone, she might be able to make it. This meant that she had someone else in the slums she couldn't leave behind. For Felt, who held such a feeling of animosity toward the people of the slums, there could only be one person she could feel that way about. Thinking about who that was, Subaru couldn't help but grin.
What's your problem? That smirk of yours is starting to tick me off.
It's no big deal. I just realized that I was worrying too much about something I didn't need to be worrying about. Of course that's how it is. Of course! I don't know why I was worrying so much.
Said Subaru, showing his teeth as he smiled. Everything suddenly made sense to him. The second time around, Felt and Rom seemed to treat each other like family. Both were killed by Elsa, but even as they were dying they must have been thinking of each other. Plus, Felt had saved Subaru's life in the nick of time once before as well. If Subaru felt indebted to Natsuki, then he should feel indebted to Felt as well.
Let's hurry up. We've already lost too much time.
I still don't understand why you are... Hey, wait! I said stop that!
As Subaru started off and walked past Felt, he put his hand on her head and roughed up her blonde hair. Her hair with its thin strands, which had probably never been combed, didn't feel bad flowing through Subaru's fingers. After Felt left the slums one day and was dressed up a bit, Subaru thought she would probably shine bright.
So, in order to also put Felt on a path to reach her dreams, I've really got to make this work, don't I? I'm the only one who can do this.
Stop saying all these weird things and getting obsessed with yourself. I'm gonna bite you.
With Subaru's hand still on Felt's head despite her protests, he silently solidified his determination. He would change the fates of not just Natsuki, but Felt and Rom as well, all of the people who had moved his heart. That must be why Subaru kept repeating this day over and over again.
I said, cut it out!
Felt said, before biting Subaru.
To the giant rats?
Where might I find me some boric acid-laced dango? Now that's some poison.
To the great white whale?
You know, the first guy who comes to mind when I think of the word Captain Ahab. Bet he has some fishing hooks.
To our most honorable great dragon?
Since this is a fantasy world, I bet they really exist. But man, if I ran into one of those, I can guarantee you I wouldn't be able to do anything. But you know they are really cool, so I do kind of want to see one, but what a contradiction, huh? Those mixed up feelings of mine can burn in hell.
Can't you just say the passwords without having to throw in all that nonsense? Can you be more irritating?
The door to the cellar slammed open so hard it looked as though it was going to come off its hinges, but Subaru, who expected this, had stepped back and was dealt no damage. Growling in frustration too tall for the entrance was the bald giant Rom, whom Subaru had grown used to seeing at this point. His face was red, his blood pressure probably high.
If you get all angry like that, you'll pop a blood vessel. Even if we had modern medicine, I'd say your situation looks pretty bad.
If you think it's so bad for me, then don't make me angry. Just who are you anyway? I'm not supposed to let anyone in today, so scram.
Ah, sorry about that. This guy is actually my customer, so could you please let him in?
Said Felt, who had been hiding behind Subaru's back and just peeked out from behind him. Rom slowly relaxed his shoulders. As Felt looked between a disappointed Rom and a whistling Subaru, she let out a sigh.
You really have a terrible personality, kid. Without being too mean, it's simply the worst. Anyway, we're coming in, Rom.
As Felt slipped past Rom, still looking down, she entered the loot cellar as if it were her own place. Rom first looked at Felt for further explanation, but was ignored, so he turned his annoyed face towards Subaru.
She really marches to the beat of her own drummer, huh? Us normal guys just get left behind, am I right?
I'd like to start back at square one, where I was first teaching her what different words meant. Anyway, get inside,
replied Rom, with the tone of a man who had given up and washed his hands of everything, before shrinking his giant body back away into the cellar. Subaru followed after Rom into the dusty air of the loot cellar. He tossed a few cautious glances this way and that, but fortunately there was no sign that Elsa or Natsatella were hiding somewhere inside. Felt was casually sitting at the bar counter, drinking a glass of milk as if it were her own.
What? This is the only cold one left. I'm not letting you have it,
she said.
I can't believe you're not the least bit bothered by how shameless you're acting. Hey, old man, I'll just have some alcohol, whatever you've got. Thanks,
said Subaru.
You're one to talk. I'm not sharing with you. You're not getting any. You hear?
Shouted Rom as he ran across the room and rushed behind the counter, creaking the floorboards as he went, trying to hide what looked like his stash. Rom's overreaction was enough to inspire pity, and Subaru just said, "I'm joking," with a chuckle.
Well then, old man, we've already wasted a lot of time, so before we get sidetracked, I'd like to get straight to the point.
I get the feeling we've already gone way off track, but what's up?
Basically, I want you to praise something. I would like you to put a price on this mighty I have here and guarantee it's worth to Felt.
When Rom realized that the conversation was turning to business, his gray eyes turned serious. Old man Rom looked at Felt, who nodded in confirmation before turning to look back at Subaru. Realizing that Rom was wordlessly asking to see the item, Subaru took his cell phone out of his pocket and handed it to Rom. It seemed that the metallic look of the phone was what first caught Rom's eye, and while he ran his fingers over it, it looked like a tiny toy in his oversized hands.
So this is a Misha. Even for someone like me, this is my first time seeing one of these.
I'm pretty sure this is the only one of its kind in the whole world. Also, it's rather delicate, so please be careful with it. If you break it, I really have to kill myself, and I'm not joking about that, of course, meaning so I can start over.
Rom spent a while carefully looking over its outward appearance, but then slowly opened the folding phone. Rom had his first surprise as the phone started up and let out a sound, and he got his second surprise when he saw the phone's wallpaper.
This picture!
I thought that this would be a good time to use that one. In order to show you the device's abilities, I put a scene from Felt's day as the wallpaper.
The wallpaper was one of the pictures that Subaru had taken of Felt when he met her in the alley. He picked the one he thought looked the cutest, and given the image quality, he thought it was quite nice overall. Rom looked from the image over at Felt, who was sipping her milk, and said,
Well, you have certainly surprised me. I don't think there's anything else out there that could draw such a perfect picture.
This is a Mitcha that takes out a slice of time and stores it away. It doesn't even compare with a picture someone has drawn, does it? If you'd like, I can take one of you as well.
I'm interested, but it seems kind of dangerous. It doesn't take any of your life away, does it?
No matter what age and no matter what world, it looks like that superstition about photographs persists, huh?
Subaru gave a weak smile in return to Rom's reaction, something that seemed like it should be out of the Taisho period, or before, and replied,
Even if I take your picture, you'll easily live until you're 80 or so.
Felt's reaction as she was listening to the conversation was also cute, and so after getting his permission, Subaru took a picture of Rom and showed it to him.
This is certainly something. If I were to take care of it, in terms of blessed gold coins, maybe 15, no, I could absolutely get more than 20 for this. I believe it's worth that much.
Rom's business sense sparked. His eyes were shining as he made his appraisal. While Subaru thought he was unsure how proud he could be to get the seal of approval from someone in the business of selling stolen goods, it certainly did put him at ease. His nostrils flaring with confidence, Subaru turned to Felt.
Well, there you have it. This is the card I have to play. Like I said, it's worth more than 20 blessed gold coins. So now, I'd like to trade you this for that badge you've got.
I I see you seem to make that face a lot, but it really is annoying.
Apparently unimpressed that everything looked as though it was going according to Subaru's plan, Felt made a face. However, that didn't change the fact that this new information made the deal sound even better to her.
Well, to be honest, I'm happy that I've got a guarantee that I can turn this Misha into cash. It looks like I don't have to doubt you anymore about it being worth 20 blessed gold coins either. I accept the card you have to play.
Right? So anyway, it looks like our negotiations have gone well. It'll be your job to sell it, but I wish you the best of luck. Now that's wrapped up, how about we go off somewhere and have a drink to celebrate our success?
Subaru quickly walked over to Felt and put out his hand to take the badge, but Felt slowly pushed it back.
Wait a minute, why are you in such of a hurry?
Life has its limits. You've got to treat every second of it as precious, and it's a shame to waste any.
Right, enough of that.
Felt said, narrowing her red eyes, and with a calm attitude stuck at the heart of her doubts.
Why do you want this badge in the first place?
Subaru paused, holding his breath, and as both Ram and Felt saw that, Subaru realized he had made a mistake. What he should have done was say a bunch of nonsense, just like he had before. However, nothing would come out. As Subaru kept his silence, Felt's mouth loosened up into a smile.
The older lady who asked me to steal it in the first place didn't want to talk about it either, and it looks like you're the same?
Well, stealing is pretty bad itself, so with theft involved, I'm sure everyone has some ulterior motives they wouldn't like to talk about.
But in your case, you stand out more than one usually would. If I slow down and think about it, you're trying to steal this away from whoever wanted me to steal it in the first place.
Felt's attitude was like one of a cat torturing its prey.
Just what is this badge anyway? It's worth more than it looks, isn't it? That's why everyone wants it. In other words, it's worth more than even this Misha.
Wait, Felt. That line of thought is really dangerous. I pretty much already know what you're planning on saying right now, even if I'm just drawing on my experience from playing games, but really, you need to stop.
As Subaru watched Felt's miserly gauge rise, he broke out in a sweat as he tried to stop her. If negotiations dragged on any longer than this, the bad end that was just waiting for them was going to be a reality.
This deal is for more than 20 blessed gold coins. Just take it. Don't be any greedier than that. Elle, the one who commissioned you, can only pay 20 blessed gold coins herself. She won't pay any more than that.
How do you know that?
Well,
the more you talk, the more you're giving away. You're in league with her, aren't you?
Subaru wished he could just tell her that he knew because of his return by death ability. But of course he couldn't. Even if he did explain it that way, there was no guarantee she would believe it. As Felt's eyes filled with even more doubt, Subaru knew that whatever he said, she wouldn't believe him anymore. At this point, he might have to wrestle the badge away from her.
but if I did that, I'd have to deal with this muscular geezer.
Well, she's got you dancing in the palm of her hand, doesn't she, kiddo? Must be embarrassing given that she's younger than you.
It's all your fault for giving her free rein. She's so tough, I feel like I'm about to cry.
If Subaru tried to be violent, all that would happen would be his getting beat to the ground by Rom. Even if he was able to grab it away from Felt, he didn't think he could outrun her. Subaru had seen how she could run like the wind. There was no way he could escape.
Felt, please.
Don't think begging is going to get you anywhere. Look, I accept your deal as an option, but it's not fair to make a deal without hearing what my original client has to say about it all. If you would tell me how much this badge is really worth and are able to prepare what it's really worth in payment, then I may reconsider, though.
In Felt's eyes was not even the slightest amount of compassion or mercy. Her two eyes were desperately trying to draw out the truth from Subaru's attitude. However, Subaru's reasons for wanting the badge were not the same as Elsa's. He only wanted to return it to its owner. But while Felt didn't know Subaru's intentions, he knew hers. Subaru knew why Felt was so desperate to negotiate the best deal possible. He knew who she was trying so desperately for. So after a pause, he told the truth.
All I want is to return that badge to its rightful owner.
What?
Telling the truth was the most sincere thing he thought he could do. So while Felt's eyes opened wide, Subaru just repeated what he said before.
I want to return that badge to its rightful owner. That's why I want it. That's all.
Felt's red eyes glinted full of animosity, but Subaru stayed silent. He didn't have it in him to joke around at this point, so he just bowed his head.
Felt, I don't think he's lying,
Said Rom.
let you be tricked by him. This has got to be a joke. Return it to its rightful owner by paying all of this money to buy it back from the person who stole it? How stupid can you get? If that's what he wanted to do, he should have brought a guard with him to round us up.
Of course Subaru couldn't do that. Natsutella didn't want to get the guards involved. That's why Subaru had refused Reinhardt's offer. Subaru couldn't go against Natsutella's wishes. It was the least that Subaru could do, and it was his answer to the one who had saved his life.
If you're going to lie, do a better job of it. Even if you act like you're serious, I won't be tricked. If I don't, that's right, I won't be tricked.
Felt said, as if shaking some thoughts from her head, ending in a feeble-sounding voice.
Felt,
Said Rom in a caring tone with a painful expression, probably knowing what was going on inside Felt. Either way, it didn't look as though Felt was going to change her mind. In other words, negotiations had failed.
who is it?
Suddenly, Rom's expression changed and he looked toward the entrance. Subaru, still in a state of shock from the negotiations breaking down, was too late to react to Rom's voice.
It could be my client. It does seem a little early, though.
Felt went over to the door, with her angry expression still on her face, and reached to open it. Subaru suddenly identified the impatient feelings welling up inside him. The loot seller, a knock at the door, Felt's client. All of those signals could only lead to one thing.
Don't open the door. We'll all be killed.
It was earlier than Subaru had expected. From the windows he could see the sun still high in the sky. It was too bright to be past sunset. The first and second times around, despair had come knocking after sunset. Subaru hadn't let his guard down about their limited time, but still, this was way too early. Subaru still hadn't accomplished anything he needed to do to change this world. Subaru didn't make it in time. Her hand was already on the door, and it was pushed open from the outside, and the reddish light of early sunset swept the dimness of the cellar away. And then,
What do you mean? Be killed. I'd never do anything that violent without warning.
said a silver-haired girl with a sour look on her face as she stepped into the cellar.
I'm so glad you're here. I won't let you get away this time.
Upon seeing the girl, Natsutella, walk in through the door, Felt wordlessly step back. Felt looked mortified, and her mouth twisted in frustration.
You really are a persistent woman, aren't you? Why couldn't you just give up already?
Said Felt, sounding as though she was on the verge of grinding her teeth together.
Unfortunately, this is not something I can give up on. If you'll be a good girl and hand it over, I won't hurt you.
Replied Natsutella, the tone of her voice incredibly cold. As Subaru felt the tension of the atmosphere in the cellar rise, he couldn't help but shiver.
Why was Natsutella here? The sun had only just begun to set. The first time around, he and Natsutella hadn't even reached the entrance to the slums yet. By the time they had reached the loot cellar, the sun was completely down, which must mean that without me, she would have found this place a lot faster. Even if Natsutella hadn't run into Subaru in the alley and healed him, she would have found this place all on her own. Subaru couldn't describe how he felt, with the uselessness of his actions across both space and time so thoroughly proven. But even as he drowned in his empty feelings, the situation advanced without him.
As Felt continued to step back, she had already crossed from the center of the room to the back, and Natsutella, while continuing to block the exit, changed her stance and pointed her palm forward. With the faint sound of shattering air, Satella activated her magic. It seemed that her specialty really was ice magic, and as icicles fanned in the air in front of the palm of her hand, the temperature of the room dropped.
I only have one demand of you. Return my badge. It is very precious to me.
There were 6 icicles floating in the air. The tips were rounded so that their power seemed more in their weight rather than their sharpness. However, it was clear that if one hit, it would do far more damage than if a stone were thrown. Of course, Subaru himself was counted among the possible targets, and so he tried his best not to incite Natsutella, just wordlessly looking on.
Rom!
Called Felt, a little over a whisper.
I can't make a move. It's your fault for bringing in such a troublesome thing along with such a troublesome opponent, Felt.
Replied Rom, his giant body tense as he shook his head. Rom had at some point grabbed his club and still held it in his hand, but his arm was slack and he didn't look ready to swing it. He seemed to be gripping and releasing it as though he was still hesitating.
You're going to give up before the fight's even started?
Said Felt, challenging Rom.
If this were an ordinary magic user, I wouldn't be complaining, but this one's a problem.
replied Ram, with a hint of admonishment in his voice, narrowing his eyes as he looked at Natsatella. In Ram's stare as he looked down at her was both an extreme sense of caution and an element of awe.
You're an elf, aren't you, miss?
Said Ram, his lips shaking. Subaru looked up reflexively. Ram guessed that she was an elf, but that would make him only half right. Subaru knew from what Natsatella had told him about herself the first time around. Upon hearing Ram's question, Natsatella closed her eyes for a few moments, and then after a small sigh she responded.
Technically, you're mistaken. Only half of what I am is an elf.
She said, in a tone as if she was making a painful confession, and Subaru furrowed his brow. However, the other two had a much more exaggerated reaction, especially Felt, and with a shudder she continued to step back and said,
A half elf and with silver hair. You can't be.
I'm not her. We only look the same. It's a problem for me too.
Subaru didn't know what was going on, but he could tell that this was a conversation that Natsatella didn't want to be having. However, Natsatella's denial didn't seem to calm Felt down. Rather, it put her even more on edge, and she turned her red eyes full of animosity towards Subaru, who was still standing silently on the sidelines.
You set me up, didn't you?
What?
I thought it was fishy when you said you wanted to return this thing to its owner. The fact that you kept me from hiring people to block her way was also part of the plan, wasn't it? You two are in this together, aren't you?
As Felt said those words, gushing full of hatred, Subaru realized a few things. One, that Felt was having another misunderstanding, but secondly, why Natsatella was able to find this place in such a short time. Normally, it really would be impossible for her to reach the loot cellar in this short amount of time. Normally, Felt would have hired people from the slums to get in Natsatella's way, delaying her arrival. Because Subaru had rushed Felt and stopped her from doing that, Natsatella had been able to come straight here. While Felt's doubts were untrue, they weren't very far off. It was true that the current situation was moving in Subaru's favor. Subaru did want to get the badge and return it to Natsatella himself so he could receive her praise, but as long as she got it back, he wouldn't complain. If things kept going at this rate, it would work as a nice backup plan. However...
Huh? What do you mean? You two aren't together.
Natsatella seemed puzzled as to why Felt was turning on Subaru, but Felt just laughed.
Cut the act! I'm the one who's backed in a corner here. So go ahead and take this badge from me and laugh at my stupidity, why don't you?
Oh, come on. Just because you're at a slight disadvantage doesn't mean you have to cave so easily,
replied Subaru.
That's all you have to say after bringing this girl here. Damn it, I've been had!
Said Felt, roughly scratching at her blonde hair and clicking her tongue. Satella seemed to frown at Felt's far from ladylike attitude, and Subaru gulped at the dangerous state of circumstances and misunderstandings, not knowing where to fix his gaze. As Subaru looked around, he realized that there was a red flower decoration pinned to the left breast of Natsatella's cloak. Ha! Subaru sighed and then smiled. All of his hesitation up to this point just seemed so stupid now. Seeing Natsatella's stern expression and attitude had reminded Subaru of the way she had rejected him in his last loop and had caused him to be unable to do anything. However, he knew that no matter how many times he looped back, Natsatella at her core wouldn't change. The fact that she had saved that little lost girl this time as well was proof of that.
The more we all talk about this, the more confusing it's going to get, so... Felt, why don't you just go ahead and give that badge back? Now, you should take it and get out of here, so you don't get it stolen from you again.
Why are you acting like you know me all of a sudden? I really don't get what's going on here.
Said Natsatella.
I don't get what's going on either. Just who do you think you are?
Asked Felt, looking at Subaru. Subaru had tried to get things moving again and change the mood, but Subaru only got turned on by both girls and failed to get anywhere. Subaru looked to Ram for help, but...
It's a magic user we're dealing with. I can't really make any moves. Don't be so hasty,
replied Ram, misunderstanding what Subaru was trying to say.
This old man's useless,
thought Subaru, just barely holding himself back from clicking his tongue in irritation, then trying to figure out how he was going to respond to both girls' stares. But just then, a black shadow silently seemed to slide in and creep up behind the girl with the silver hair.
Puck! Block!
A sensual smile melted into the shadows and raced forward, and a silver glint seemed to squirm as it lunged toward Natsatella's white neck. In that instant, with Subaru's eyes opened wide, the girl's head went flying. At least it would have.
As Natsatella was thrown slightly forward, there was a bluish-white magic circle activated behind her head. The light of the magic circle took the tip of the blade and had just barely kept the silver-haired girl alive. Natsatella then leapt forward and turned around, her silver hair waving, and behind that curtain of hair Subaru could see a gray-colored furry animal standing. Puck lifted up its nose, proud of its save, before looking towards Subaru.
That was just in the nick of time there. You saved us.
Nice going there, Puck. Really, I'm the one who's saved. Thanks,
said Subaru, giving the cat a thumbs up, even as he was still shaken. It was still before the sun had set. In other words, Natsatella's very reliable backup partner was still on its working hours. Subaru's quick response was important, but it was due to Puck's amazing performance that Natsatella was still safe. As for the aggressor, her surprise attack blocked.
A spirit, huh? That's wonderful. I haven't ever opened the stomach of a spirit before.
Lifting her dangerous weapon in front of her face, the woman's expression was one of ecstasy. It was the murderer Subaru had seen so many times before, Elsa. Both Subaru and Natsatella were immediately on guard in response to the sudden new arrival, but the first one to react was neither of them.
Hey, what's the meaning of this?
Felt yelled, stepping forward with her voice raised in anger. Felt pointed a finger at Elsa and then took the badge out of her pocket with her other hand.
Whoa, all you're supposed to do is buy this badge from me. Turning this place into a bloodbath was not part of our agreement.
Buying the stolen badge from you is certainly what I came here to do, but it's hard to hold any negotiations if its owner had already come and taken it away. So, I decided on a change of plans.
Felt's face was red with anger, but upon seeing Elsa's eyes fixed on her, wet with murderous intent, she gulped. Elsa looked on, with an almost loving gaze, at Felt's fear.
I'll just kill everyone here, and then I'll pick that badge up from the sea of blood afterward,
said Elsa, all while holding the expression of an affectionate mother on her face. She then tilted her head and continued on cruelly.
You weren't able to do your job. Do you really expect me not to throw away something that's useless to me?
Felt's face twisted as if in pain, but the emotion behind it was not of fear but something else. Elsa's words must have touched upon something sensitive. Deep inside her, Subaru didn't know what that was, but
Don't give me that, you bitch!
it was enough for Subaru to shout out in anger at Elsa and forget about how weak he was compared to her. Elsa turned and looked at Subaru, surprised, and she wasn't the only one. Felt and Rom turned to Subaru, and even Natsatella was no exception. However, the one most surprised was none of them. It was Subaru. He couldn't understand himself, just why he was so angry. In part because he could not understand it. As this emotion rose up inside him, he spit all of it out.
Is it really that fun for you to pick on such a little kid, you intestine-obsessed sadist? Just because things aren't going exactly the way you planned, you're going to wreck everything and throw a tantrum? What are you, 5? How about you treasure life for once? Do you know how much it hurts to have your stomach ripped open? I know!
What are you trying to say?
I'm just taking this moment to let the unforeseen sense of justice inside me rant about the injustice of this damn world. And right now, to me, the injustice of this world is you and this situation, so right now I'm channeling all of my anger about everything onto you.
As Subaru's shouting continued to make no sense to her, Elsa let out a rare, exasperated sigh. But while Subaru was kind of hurt by her non-serious reaction, with spit flying, he shouted one more time.
All right. That's enough buying for time. Get her, Puck.
That was such an amazingly lame tirade there. I want to write it down and leave it for future generations. Guess I'll have to respond to your expectations, huh?
Compared with Subaru's shouting and stomping, Puck's voice was aloof and detached. Elsa immediately looked up, but all around her from all sides were sharpened icicles, more than 20 in all.
It seems I haven't introduced myself, little lady. My name is Puck. I'd like it if you at least remembered my name as you say farewell to this world.
Immediately afterward, the icicles flew at Elsa. Elsa's black coat was lost in the low-temperature storm. The speed of the icicles was far greater than what Subaru had seen in the alley. and he could just barely follow them with his eyes. Subaru thought the sharp-tipped icicles would easily cut through Elsa's body, the tips of the clear bullets stained red with blood. There were 20 of them. If any of them hit their mark, it should be a lethal. However,
Did we get her?
Now, why did you have go and to say that?
yelled back. Even though Ram had been quiet all this time, he had said the worst possible thing at the worst possible moment.
It pays to be prepared. I don't like wearing it because it is heavy, but it looks like I was right to wear it this time.
Cutting through the white smoke, Elsa leapt out, with her black hair dancing behind her. She had her kukri held high in her hand, and in her light steps it appeared she had no injuries, other than the fact that she had thrown off her black coat and was now only wearing her black skin-tight outfit. She looked no different from before.
You're not going to tell me that because that coat is so heavy that just by shedding it you're suddenly a lot faster, are you?
That would be interesting, but the truth is simple. That coat has a formula woven into it that can ward off magic a single time. It looks like it saved my life.
Elsa politely answered Subaru's question before kneeling down and striking upward with the tip of her knife. The target was not Satella, and the strike was aimed to drive the knife into her chest. Subaru instinctively started to cry out, but
I'd like it if you didn't underestimate spirit mages. We're pretty frightening if you make enemies of us.
not Satella clapped her hands together in front of her chest, forming a multi-layered ice shield that was easily pierced by Elsa's blade. But it took the knife and stopped her attack. Elsa immediately leapt back to retreat as a few smaller icicles were hurtled her way. The counterattack was due to Puck, who was standing on Satella's shoulder by her silver hair, sweeping his arms this way and that like a battle commander.
One manages defense and the other attack. In reality, it's 2 against 1,
said Subaru, impressed.
That's the tricky thing about spirit mages. One'll attack and the other defends. Depending on the situation, one might use simple magic, buying for time, as the other prepares a special attack. That's why we on the battlefield say, when you meet a spirit mage, lay down your weapons and wallet and run,
muttered Ram, still gripping his club. Subaru nodded. It didn't look as though the pairing between a spirit mage and their spirit could be easily beat.
By the way, old man, what is it you're planning on doing?
I'm looking for an opening so I can help out that elf girl. Of the two, she seems the one more willing to listen to us.
Wait! No! You'll only get in their way. If you go out there, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to lose your right arm and have your throat slit. Stay right where you are.
Don't say that. The way you put it makes it sound like I've already been cut down.
As Subaru had seen Ram get cut down twice already, his words had a sense of truth in their tone. As if Ram was feeling what had happened to him in those different dimensions, he put his hands on his arm and neck. While Subaru was able to talk Ram out of it, the truth was that the fight between Elsa and Natsuki was so intense, it didn't look like there was anywhere anyone could cut in. Countless ice shards had been created and were flying. Zero by Tapai Nagatsuki. Want to create an audiobook like this yourself? Try rtale.ai. Now sit back and enjoy the story. All over the room. However, in the midst of all of that, the way Elsa was handling it could only be described as superhuman. She would spin around, duck down so low it looked as though she were crawling on the ground, and at times she would step on the walls to evade attacks as though she were completely ignoring gravity. If even with all of that she didn't seem able to dodge an attack, she would use her blade to cut through the ice crystals and shatter them. She had paired with what her opponent could do in number with an overwhelming degree of skill.
She really looks used to fighting despite her being a woman.
Well, it's been a very long time since someone called me a girl.
From my perspective, most people I deal with are like babies to me. But even so, you're so strong. I almost feel like I should pity you.
To be complimented by a spirit such as yourself, I must say I'm honored.
As Elsa gladly took Puck's praise, she fended off another shard of ice with her knife. Almost 100 pieces of ice must have been thrown at her. But other than that very first attack, it didn't seem as though a single one of them had made their mark.
I think if they keep this up, Elsa will tire out before they do, but I'm still anxious.
That woman in black's movements really are incredible, but I don't think they can lose if they continue to hold the advantage in numbers, but it's not like that spirit will be able to keep itself here forever. As soon as that spirit's out, the balance of power will shift.
Damn, you're right. How soon is it to 5 o'clock? The first time around, Puck went to sleep just a little after sunset. It wasn't as though much time had passed since the start of the battle, but with this much magic use, wouldn't he be using up all of his stored mana or whatever?
Just when things were starting to get fun, it pains me to see that something else is distracting you from paying attention to me. It's toned. How me excelv. How bade.
As a popular male, it really is tough on me. I can never put the girls to sleep. However, you know if you stay up too late, it's bad for your skin.
Just as Subaru was beginning to worry that Puck had reached his limit, Elsa's movement suddenly stopped. In response, Puck winked his black eyes at her.
Don't you think it's about time we draw the curtain on this performance? When we keep repeating the same act, it begins to get boring.
My foot.
As soon as Elsa tried to take a step, she fell forward, catching herself with her hands on the ground. Elsa's right foot had been frozen to the floor. The fragments of the ice shards Elsa had broken had piled up on the ground, and some had served as a way to bind Elsa's feet.
You didn't really think I was scattering all of these things around for no reason, did you?
I guess this means you've got me.
Just blame it on the gap in our ages. You have plenty of reason to congratulate yourself for getting this far. Now, good night.
Throwing its chest out, Puck's body, still standing on Natsatella's shoulder, started to oscillate at a high frequency. Puck was posed as if he was about to release his ultimate move, with both paws out in front, focusing more magic than ever before, and Subaru watched as that magic was shot off like an arrow. The magic did not take the shape of ice, but was simply a load of destructive energy. Along the path of the bluish-white light, everything froze, and in one fell swoop the loot cellar was filled with white. The energy passed through Elsa and broke into the door that formed the entrance to the cellar, blowing it off its hinges, and residual freezing energy from the attack even reached outside. As the brilliant light from the attack passed, everything was frozen, from the counter to the stolen items to even the ground they lay on. Of course, if directly hit, even a human being would quickly turn into an ice statue, but…
Shh! It can't be.
Of course it can. That was wonderful. I really thought I was going to die there.
This was all assuming the attack would hit.
With you being a girl, I can't say I approve.
While Puck's attack was dodged, Puck didn't seem any angrier than what his words conveyed. He simply wasn't happy with what Elsa had done. Subaru saw blood dripping, and a bit of steam was rising from the frozen ground. The blood was coming from Elsa's right foot. She was standing barefoot just out of the line of fire from Puck's attack, and bleeding profusely from her right foot, and it wasn't hard to see why. After all, she had sliced off the sole of her foot.
I was afraid I might lop the whole foot off, seeing as how I hurried. That was a close one.
Even if you only cut that much, it must hurt a lot.
Well, yes, you're right, but it's wonderful. It makes me feel alive, and in addition to that…
In response to Puck's worried-sounding words, Elsa nodded with a look of ecstasy in her eyes, and without hesitation pushed her bleeding foot against a piece of ice. A sound that sounded like air shattering came erotically from Elsa's throat, and then immediately afterward she took her knife to the ice around her foot. With that, she had managed to stop the bleeding with the ice.
It's a little hard to move, but this should be enough.
Subaru had no word to say in response to how Elsa's addiction to fighting left her without any hesitation when it came to maiming herself. But right now it was her opponent, not Satella, who was in trouble.
Puck, do you think you can keep going?
I'm sorry, but I'm really tired. I think I really underestimated her. At this rate, I'm going to disappear from having run out of mana.
As the cat stood on Natsatella's shoulder, its figure began to shine and looked as though it would fade at any moment. They were out of time.
I'll find a way to handle the rest on my own, so go ahead and rest. Thank you.
If something happens, I'll obey my contract. If need be, call me out, even if you have to use your odd.
Subaru bit his lip, but he wasn't the one most disappointed by Puck's departure.
Oh, you're going away. That's terribly unfortunate.
She readied her kukri again and with the high-pitched click of her icy shoe began to head towards Satella. A number of icicles materialized around Natsatella in response, but there were far fewer than when Puck was with her. Even though Elsa had her movement limited now, the match appeared even.
It looks like we can't just sit around and watch this anymore, can we? I don't know who's going to win this anymore. so if we just wait around, we're going to miss our chance. You understand, right, Felt?
I know. Whether we help or run, we're going to have to make a move soon.
Felt moved beside Rom and then turned to Subaru.
About what you said before, thanks. It made me feel better. Only a little bit. Plus, don't call me a little kid. I'm 15 years old. You're not much older than me, right?
Actually, I'll be 18 this year. I'll be able to get a license to drive a car, and I can get married too.
You can't be that old. Your face looks younger than mine. Age a little, why don't you? At least on your face.
Well, I had lived my years lazily in the peaceful country of Japan, aiming to live every day as ordinarily as possible, so it couldn't be helped.
Subaru felt as though his lack of determination was being mocked, and so he looked down at the ground, feeling useless. The weakest one here was Subaru, and it was enough that he was completely lacking in the ability to fight, but also...
My legs just can't stop shaking. I guess this is what happens when you lack resolve.
Forget about being qualified to fight. Subaru was physically unable to. Rom had strength in his arms and felt strength in her legs, and Natsutella had strength in her magic, and so all of them could manage to fight. However, Elsa's abnormality trumped all of those abilities.
It looks like she's starting to get pushed back.
Natsutella hadn't stopped shooting projectiles at Elsa, but Elsa just slapped them away with her blade, rendering them useless. In response to Elsa's dance of slicing attacks, Natsutella would block the attacks with her ice shield and freeze the ground in front of her feet to slide away, barely dodging Elsa's continuing attacks. After Natsutella gained some distance, she would continue her barrage, but you could not deny that her position was inferior to Elsa's. To change the current situation, some kind of support was absolutely necessary. Some continuous support was absolutely necessary to stance.
All right. I'm going.
Apparently Rom had thought the same as Subaru, and after letting out a yell, Rom joined the fight. As Rom swung his club, it brought a gust of air along with it, and as Elsa ducked, her hair was caught up a little in the blast.
Oh, how rude of you to interrupt our dance.
If you want to dance that much, then I'll make you dance a fine dance. So give it your best shot.
As Rom swung his thorny pointed club at Elsa, he changed his line of attack. He thrust the club toward Elsa's throat, but Rom froze at the result.
What the hell is this?
I'm only able to do this because you're so strong. I'm only able to do this because you're so strong.
That kind of technique could only be accomplished with a godlike sense of balance. Before that balance could be broken, Elsa swung her blade horizontally at Rom. The strike was level with Rom's forehead. If it landed, the top of his head would be sent flying.
Oh! You think I'd let you?
The collision had altered the path of Elsa's sword, but the side of it still collided full force into the side of Rom's head. A dull sound rang out as Rom toppled over to the side.
What a naughty little girl.
Felt's small knife had saved Rom's life. She probably had aimed for Elsa's arm, but in the rush of the moment her aim was a little off. However, without that slight miss, Rom might not have been saved.
You don't have the determination or power to fight. You should have just cowered in the corner like a good little girl.
The high-pitched click of Elsa's step rang out as she instantly closed the distance between herself and Felt. Rom was unconscious, and Natsutella, who had been trying to keep her distance, was now too far away. Felt herself had frozen like a frog being stared down by a snake, and so the only one who was able to tackle her to safety was the coward who had been shivering beside her moments before. Subaru dove into Felt at about hip level, and while hugging her light body tumbled across the ground, just before he hit the ground, he felt something metal scrape across the back of his head, which made all his hair stand on end. But, feeling the weight of the person in his arms, he did his absolute best to ignore it and kept rolling to put as much distance as possible from where they were before. When at last Subaru looked back, standing on his knees, Elsa was staring back at him in surprise. Feeling as though he had pulled one over on Elsa, Subaru couldn't help but smile back, awkwardly but proudly.
Are you all right? I was desperate there, so if I accidentally touched somewhere I shouldn't have, please forgive me, okay?
If you hadn't said that, I would have thanked you like normal. But why?
I don't know. My body moved on its own. If I had to give a reason, well, you don't know about this, but with this now, we're totally even, okay? Remember that. We're even now. The second time around, Felt had saved me from Elsa's blade. That memory didn't mean anything in the world this time around, but with this I was able to repay my debt. I thought that even so, my debts should be returned, so nothing about what I needed to do before had changed. Listen here, Felt. Right now I'm gonna do the same sort of thing as Rom did before he was knocked out to help stall for time. When that happens, I'll be sure to open up a window for you, so I want you to use that opportunity to run out of here as fast as you can. You got it?
What? No! Are you telling me to just turn tail and flee?
But Subaru just got closer and stared right back at her. As he did so, he was sure not to miss the moment when Felt looked as though she was scared at what Subaru was trying to say.
Yes! That's what I'm telling you to do. Turn tail and flee. To be honest, that's exactly what I want to do right now. I don't want to stay another second in this violent space.
Don't give me that. You were just shaking yourself a minute ago.
That was then, this is now. I'm not shaking now, so it's okay. Really, before I remember and start shaking, I've got to do this now, okay? So get ready to run.
Subaru put his hand on Felt's forehead as she looked as though she was going to object again and then pulled himself to his feet. Not far away on the ground was Rom's club. It looked really heavy, but Subaru thought he would still be able to swing it. As Natsuki continued to shoot barrages of ice at Elsa, there was not a sign of dullness in her movements as she danced to avoid the shots. In the first place, Subaru wasn't really sure if he, faced with a superhuman like Elsa, with absolutely no real fighting experience himself, could open up a window for Felt to run. All that he could do was wordlessly spring a surprise attack on her when she wasn't paying attention to him. So right after Elsa had swung her knife and shattered a large icicle, and Subaru was completely in one of her blind spots, Subaru sprang forward at her, forgetting even to breathe, and swung the club down on her. Perhaps Subaru's adrenaline had finally kicked in, because the speed of his swing was far faster than he had imagined it would be. It sliced through the air toward the back of her head and...
You picked the right moment and angle to target me, but unfortunately I could have sensed your intent to kill a mile away.
Intent to kill? I have no idea how I'm supposed to hide that.
In order to block the swing that came directly behind her, Elsa struck the club with the blunt edge of her blade, changing the course of the swing enough for it to miss its mark. However, at that very instant, Subaru opened his mouth wide with his teeth bared and yelled.
Now, Felt, run!
She was going so fast that Subaru couldn't keep track of her with his eyes, and the girl, now turned to wind, rushed to the exit.
Do you really think I'd let you go?
To stop Felt, Elsa took another knife out of her breast pocket and threw it toward Felt. As if it were a symbol of payback from what Felt did before, the simple undecorated knife flew straight at her back. However,
too bad, but I want to let her go.
Subaru kicked the round table that was beside him upward, which collided with the knife and sent it off course.
Man, I'm awesome. That was awesome. Wow, my toe hurts more than I thought it was going to. Oh, wow!
Maybe it was Subaru's adrenaline again, or some power that had awakened in him that failed to activate the last 3 times, but as Elsa's long leg came up and kicked him in the side of the head and sent him flying, his self-congratulations were cut short. He was hit so hard the world seemed to spin around, and together with the onset of pain and taste of blood in his mouth, Subaru threw up.
That's the first time in a long time someone's made me actually a little bit angry.
Well, that's something I'm happy to hear. Ha ha! Serves you right. I let one of us get away.
Subaru stood back up and pretended to be in better shape than he was, doing his best to continue drawing Elsa's attention. As if Elsa had read Subaru's mind, she smiled at him and forgot about Felt for the time being.
Fine, if that's what you want, I'll pay attention to you. Your dancing had better not bore me.
I'm going to go ahead and warn you, but if you're going to dance with me, you'd better be careful. I haven't learned a thing about dancing, so I'll be sure to step all over your feet.
He readjusted his grip on the club that was still in his hands. It wasn't as though Subaru was going to have very many chances to land a hit, so he used everything he had to focus on striking Elsa as she rushed toward him.
You'd better not forget about me.
But without even looking back, Elsa swung her blade and broke the ice to pieces, with Elsa's superhuman senses on full display. Even Subaru wasn't able to keep taunting her.
I've started to get tired of this little game. Are you sure you'll be able to keep me entertained?
As Subaru gazed at her smile, he felt a shiver run down his spine and looked over at Natsutella to make eye contact.
If you've got some kind of hidden true power available, I think that now would be a great time to use it.
I do have another trick up my sleeve, but if I use it, I'll be the only one left alive.
I would like it if you held back on that, then. No self-destructs, please. Okay, fine, I get it. Damn. Use it if you have to, but don't be too hasty, alright?
Subaru intended that to be a joke, in order to help shake off some of his cowardice, but Natsutella took Subaru's statement seriously. After seeing him take a deep breath and solidify his determination, Natsutella's lips relaxed into an almost smile.
I won't use it. I can't while you're still trying your best. You can do this, so keep on struggling. Relying on the power of one's parents is my absolute final option.
As she said that, she really did look as though she was running out of options, and that lit a fire inside Subaru. In one way, Natsutella looked as though she was just about ready to give up. At the same time, she looked ready to accept the fact that Subaru was weak and wouldn't help much.
To me, Natsutella was someone who, no matter how tough things got, would never look down and give up, because that was the way she was. I had worked so hard to see her smile. I had died several times and come this far in order to save her. I hadn't come this far just to see her give up. I didn't see anything right now.
What?
This conversation we just had, it didn't happen. I just remembered the reason I'm here. Just leave it to me, damn it. I'm going to make sure you never have to use that final option of yours.
Subaru pointed at Natsutella and then at Elsa, and made his declaration. He spit as he did, stomped on the ground, and let all of his emotions howl out from his soul.
I'm going to blow you away and we're going to have ourselves a happy ending. You don't belong here, so scram.
Well, don't. You look overexcited.
I'm just ready to give it my all. This time's gonna be the climax. I've got a lot more energy than before.
As Elsa leaned forward, Subaru swung the club as if he was declaring he was going to hit a home run. Elsa's lips then curled into a smile and she melted away into the darkness. From such a low height that it looked as though she was crawling on the ground, Elsa slid towards Subaru. As he kept his eyes on the dull glint of her blade, Subaru swung the club with all his might. Subaru swing the club with all his might. Subaru's swing held nothing back. He was nothing and was so low it looked as though she was licking the ground.
You Spider-Woman!
Well, I suppose it's correct to say that you're tangled in my web.
As Subaru saw Elsa's sword rising upward, Subaru quickly threw his body back. However, he still couldn't pull out of the striking range of her sword. Fear raced up Subaru's spine, and without thinking he kicked up his knee. Even though he hadn't meant to aim his knee anywhere, as Elsa was right in front of him, it landed straight in her stomach. The path of the blade shifted a little, and then right in that path came a bluish-white light, followed by a high-pitched sound.
An ice shield. Nice cover.
I'm not good at making those at a distance. I could have accidentally frozen someone.
Her, right? You mean her, right?
Natsutella continued to draw Elsa back with her barrage of ice.
I've started to grow tired of you, little buzzing insect. I think it's about time I wrap this up.
Hey, don't underestimate bugs, okay? It's not my fault if you get stung and break out in hives.
Well, don't you sound all high and mighty when you're out of my striking range?
While Subaru would have loved to try to aim for Elsa's back as she continued to dodge, he didn't want to run the risk of becoming victim to friendly fire, so he really couldn't move. That was probably the reason that Natsutella's attacks were muted when Subaru made his move before. It was the kind of problem you have to face when working on an improvised team. Subaru continued to watch as Elsa deflected Natsutella's attacks every now and then, diving in with an attack of his own, before retreating again, but he could sense the situation getting worse. If Elsa really wanted to, it was clear that she could quickly take care of Subaru, like she did Rom. The only reason it appeared that they were on equal footing was because Elsa would not divert her full attention to him. Elsa's caution was instead directed to the possibility that the spirit Puck would appear again. That was enough to keep the current situation holding. Another reason that Elsa didn't act was because Subaru's cowardice was holding him a step back. He was taking care not to put himself in range of lethal danger. If Subaru had been a brave idiot, she would have cut him down and the balance would have shifted. However, It didn't look as though Subaru's cowardice would serve him much longer. As Elsa's counterattacks grew more severe, Subaru's retreats weren't making it in time, and he was getting slight cuts all over himself. Subaru had cuts on his upper arms, on his calves, his underarms, and even a few slight cuts to his neck. And as those injuries increased, Subaru's gray tracksuit began to be stained with blood.
Damn, it hurts. How about this?
Even though the pain was enough to bring him to tears, Subaru swung a kick, trying to do something new to catch Elsa off guard. However,
I'll just take that.
Damn.
Elsa had easily avoided Subaru's kick, and to top it all off, she had easily grabbed his leg. Elsa raised her kukri, aiming to lop off the whole leg. With the strength of Elsa's swing, its speed, and the sharpness of the blade, Subaru knew what would happen next. His leg would be cut off at the thigh and he would die from shock as the loss of blood and pain overwhelmed him. Subaru could just see the words "Bad End 4" rising up in front of his eyes.
I shouldn't have done that. He tried to raise the club to block, but with the handicap he was facing, with one leg held in the air, he wouldn't make it in time.
Natsuki screamed. The cut would mercilessly reach his leg in moments. As Subaru thought of the pain and spilling of blood, it would bring a scream rose in his throat. The blood he would vomit when...
That's enough.
A flame appeared, burning through the roof from the center of the loot cellar. The flame was filled with a ghastly malice that swept through the room and stopped even Elsa in her tracks. Subaru's leg released. He hopped back before falling down. Right before his eyes, in the middle of a rising pillar of smoke, he saw a red, burning, shining figure.
That was close. I'm glad I made it in time. Now...
You're...
The flame wavered and stepped forward. Its very existence was enough to make Subaru Natsuki and Elsa all freeze, taking in the gazes from everyone present. Without being shaken one bit stood an absolute sense of will. With sky-blue eyes shining with a pure sense of justice, the young man smiled faintly.
I think it's time to draw the curtain on this performance.
As Felt sped like the wind through the entryway to the loot cellar, she felt as though she had been released from despair. Behind her, Felt could hear the freezing of the air and the sound of metal clanging on ice. She also heard the sound of a blunt object swinging through the air, along with "he" and "wah" and other stupid-sounding utterances from someone dodging attacks. The battle still raged on behind her. As Felt's legs started to shake as she ran, she shook her head to try to deny the mess of thoughts running through it. It was clear that if she had stayed behind, she would have been killed. Against an opponent who could knock Rom out with a single blow, Felt didn't have a chance. The same went for that silver-haired half-elf. Without support from her spirit, there was no way that she could win against that woman, either. Subaru was even worse off. It was clear that he had little experience fighting and didn't seem used to it at all. His clean hands and fingers were proof that he had never even tried to hold a weapon before, and his clean hair and skin was proof that he had never been wounded before. In other words, Subaru had lived a sheltered life, one in which it was not necessary to consider fighting. Given that he had such an expensive mishi on him, it all made sense. Felt should just accept that it served him right. Despite not knowing anything about the world, Subaru had let a notion of chivalry get the best of him and try something far beyond his means. Felt should simply laugh at his idiocy. Subaru went and tried to act cool and let her get away, so he would probably be happy to see her keep running. But still.
Someone? Anyone?
Though Felt knew in her mind that she should be winding down alleys, she had run straight toward the main street. Out of breath and with an expression of panic on her face, Felt looked this way and that. This was strange. Felt reached up and frantically rubbed her teary eyes.
Even if I had reason to be sad about Rom, Subaru was someone that I'd just met. Why should I care if he died? But Subaru had gotten mad at Elsa for my sake, and he had just about thrown his life away so I could get away alive.
Felt didn't understand what she was feeling, but because those feelings were there in her heart, she kept running about. She had felt something in response to Subaru's actions. Because of those feelings, her feverishness did not subside, and while she felt like she wanted to scream, Felt kept running. Then, finally, after running down a few streets,
Please, help me.
Understood. I'll help you.
she found a young man like red fire and changed the fate of the world.
Reinhard?
That is correct, Subaru. I suppose it hasn't been too long since we've last met. I'm sorry I'm late.
The red-haired young man Reinhard turned to face Subaru, who was still toppled over on the ground, with a slight apologetic smile. Even as Reinhard wiped the dust from his sleeve, every motion seemed trained and deliberate. The way Reinhard carried himself was different from when Subaru first encountered him in the alley with Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest, and as Subaru watched him, he thought he was now seeing a glimpse of Reinhard's true self. Without letting his guard down for a moment, Reinhard looked ahead and turned his eyes toward the black-clothed beauty who was now focusing her animosity toward him. Reinhard's blue eyes narrowed, as if he were remembering something.
Black hair and black clothes, and your weapon is the bent blade particular to the northern countries. With all of those characteristics aligned, there's no mistaking it. You are the Bowl Hunter, aren't you?
What's with that super violent sounding alias?
It's an alias given to her, based on the way she kills. She's well known in the capital to be a dangerous individual. However, from what I hear, she appears to be more of a mercenary.
Reinhard. Ah, yes. The knight among knights, and of the master swordsman lineage. Well, that's amazing. I never thought I'd meet such an enjoyable opponent. I'll have to thank my employer now for giving this job. Now won't I?
There are many things I would like to ask you. I recommend you surrender, however.
Would you say to a starving predator as it stands before its wounded prey, a perfect specimen and already dripping blood, to bear its hunger and move on?
Elsa licked her thin red lips erotically with a look of ecstasy in her case as she stared at Reinhard.
I see. Subaru, I'm going to have to ask you to get farther away, and please take that elderly man with you out of harm's way. After that, if you could stay beside that other person there, it would help me a lot.
Understood. That woman's quite the monster, so don't let your guard down, all right?
Fortunately, you could say that fighting monsters is my specialty.
Reinhard did not even reach for the sword at his waist but continued on empty-handed. After a sharp intake of breath, the kukri in Elsa's hand flew forward in a flash toward Reinhard's neck. Unlike when Subaru was her opponent, there was no sign that Elsa was holding back as she made her silver strike, and it seemed to kill the very air as it raced toward Reinhard's slender neck. Yet Reinhard was completely defenseless. Not only did he not make any move to dodge the attack, Subaru could already picture Reinhard's head flying off his body. However,
I don't really want to be violent against a woman, but you'll have to excuse me.
Reinhard planted one foot down, the pressure behind it fracturing the ground beneath him, and with the other leg launched a kick so strong it created a shockwave as it collided with Elsa and sent her body flying. The backblast was strong enough for Subaru to feel it where he stood. He was speechless. All it was an ordinary forward kick, but the air pressure it caused was enough to create a wind that shook the entire building. Elsa, who took the hit head-on, was blown away like a leaf. However, she was able to reduce the damage taken by springing off the walls to kill the force of impact with her legs. Still, when she looked up, you could see the look of shock on her face.
No, there's no way. You're kidding me, right? Just what the hell was that?
I had described certain things as being on a totally different scale several times before in my life, and it was at this very moment that I realized I had been mistaken. That phrase, on a totally different scale, existed solely for the purpose to describe this hero who stood in front of me. Before Reinhard's existence, all of the extraordinary phenomena of this new world dulled in comparison.
It's just as they say. Or rather, you're more than what everyone says you are.
Well, I can only hope I'll live up to your expectations.
Will you not use that sword of yours? I would like to have a taste of its legendary sharpness.
Elsa pointed at Reinhard's sword. She wanted to face Reinhard at full force, without him holding back. However, Reinhard shook his head.
This sword is made so that it can only be drawn when it should be drawn. The fact that the blade has not removed itself from its sheath means that now is not the proper time.
I suppose I've been underestimated.
Personally, I would have preferred to take you up on your offer. So,
Reinhard suddenly turned his eyes away from Elsa and looked about the inside of the loot cellar. Eyes eventually settled on an old-looking two-handed sword propped up against the wall. Reinhard used his foot to kick up on the hilt, sending the unsheathed sword spinning through the air. He easily grabbed it in his hand and swung it once lightly as if testing it out.
I'll use this one to face you. Any complaints?
No. This is wonderful, wonderful. You had better show me a good time.
As Reinhard gripped his blade, Elsa made the first move, darting to the side. As she made her slicing attack, she leapt to increase its speed. In response, Reinhard readied a stance to swing his sword from below straight upward. In that moment of attack and defense, Subaru was able to get a clear view of what was happening. Reinhard's strike was sublime, it was magical, it was perfectly trained. In his hands, even a throwaway sword at its end of life sleeping away in a cellar, shone like some treasured sword passed on by legend across generations. Reinhard's sword technique captured every ounce of performance that could be extracted by the sword, and he used it at will. Reinhard's blade hit its mark, just where the blade of Elsa's kukri met its handle. Despite the fact that it was two pieces of steel striking together, Reinhard's sword showed an unbelievable amount of cutting power and sliced the blade of Elsa's blade right off its base. Elsa had no words for the fate of the kukri she held in her hand. The blade had become just a handle. And as for the remainder,
Now that you have lost your weapon, I recommend you surrender.
as Reinhard turned around, he held the blade of Elsa's kukri in his free hand. With a flick of his wrist, he threw it, and with a sharp sound it stuck, lodged in the wall. Even Subaru could hear Elsa gasp.
He really is not normal. I can't even find the energy to joke about it.
Subaru just barely squeezed out what he thought and hurried to put distance between himself and the battle taking place. Along the way, Subaru went over to Ram and somehow was able to drag his giant body to a spot along the wall.
Ram. Old man Ram. Hey, Baldy, you alive?
Who? You? Colin Baldy?
Who else? My only goals in life are to never go bald or get fat. You are, like, the best example for me of who I don't want to end up like.
Even though Ram's response was weak, after giving him a few more slaps on the cheek, Subaru let out a sigh of relief. Other than the fact that Ram had hit his head pretty hard, everything else looked all right. There was a chance that Ram's memory might take a hit, but considering he was alive, it didn't seem like much of a problem.
Does it look like that person's gonna be all right?
As she came running up beside Subaru, her long silver hair trailing behind her. Checking the state of Ram's injuries, she muttered, "He needs treatment," and her hands began to glow with a faint blue light.
Hey now, I'm just saying, but this old man's in league with the one who stole your badge. You know that?
That's precisely why I'm doing it. Once I heal him, I can use his gratitude to get information out of him. People don't tend to lie to people who've saved their life. I'm only doing this for my own sake.
It was like she could not justify any of her actions unless she made a case for them being for her own sake. Subaru gave the ever-roundabout Natsutella a weak smile and looked back toward the battlefield. Elsa was on her knees, but Subaru couldn't see her face. All Subaru could think was that Reinhard had taken away her will to fight. With his old sword down by his side, Reinhard approached Elsa with his defenses down. Surely Reinhard had confidence in the difference in ability between himself and Elsa, but pride always leads to the worst possible outcome. An alarm rang inside Subaru's head.
Reinhard. She's got another blade.
As Elsa's second kukri was drawn from her waist, it took a bit of Reinhard's bangs as he leaned back. With her surprise attack evaded, she turned her eyes towards Subaru.
I'm surprised you knew.
Well, I've already experienced it once before.
Elsa apparently decided that what Subaru was saying was nonsense and ignored him.
However, you'd be wrong to think I have only 2 of these fangs. Shall we start over?
Will you be satisfied if I destroy all of your weapons?
If I lose my fangs, I'll fight with my nails. If I lose my nails, I'll fight with my bones. If I lose my bones, I'll fight with my life. That is how I, the bow hunter, do things.
In that case, I'll just have to have you forsake your ideals.
Elsa drew a third knife from her waist and held both at the ready. Worthy of the Spider-Woman insult that Subaru had lobbed at her before, Elsa seemed to fly about the room as though she were ignoring gravity, using all space on the ground and in the air available to her. As blade met blade and steel met steel, each violent collision sent sparks flying. Kicking off from the walls and from the ceiling, Elsa continued her fighting style of attack and retreat. Reinhard met her attacks as they came. As the battle seemed to go back and forth, Subaru gulped as he watched in wear. Elsa continued her fighting style of attack and retreat.
It can't be possible that even Reinhard lacks the ability to settle this, can it?
Elsa's abilities had stepped out of the realm of human possibility, and it was hard for Subaru to even track her movements. However, Reinhard's ability was, at its very core, legendary. Their battle was like two gods colliding with each other in the heavens. But Subaru could see that, in terms of pure ability, Reinhard was far ahead of Elsa. But then, why was the battle still raging?
We're holding him back.
Huh?
Because I'm using spirit magic, he can fight full force. At least not until I finish my healing.
I have no idea what you're trying to say.
If Reinhard decides to fight full force, all of the mana in the atmosphere around us will turn away from me. I'm almost done. When I give the signal, call out to him.
Subaru still didn't understand her explanation, but while still a little unsure, he agreed. The blue light continued to heal the bump protruding from Rom's head, and another wound that had been bleeding a little. Subaru looked on amazed as the traces of blood in the opening of the wound gradually disappeared, when Natsitella took a deep breath and let it out.
I'm done.
Leave it to me. Hey, Reinhard! I don't really understand, but get her.
Subaru delivered the message to Reinhard, who had continually been on the defensive, that Rom's treatment was complete. Reinhard glanced back. When his and Subaru's eyes met, he gave a slight nod.
What is it you're going to show me?
The House of Estrella's sword.
Immediately afterwards, Subaru felt all of the space in the cellar warp.
What?
Subaru saw the air in his line of sight twist, and he couldn't be sure, but he thought that the room had lost some of its light. Apart from that, the room's temperature, which had already been falling because of all of the ice magic, dropped even further. Subaru found himself shivering and hugging his shoulders.
Wait? Huh? Why you…
I'm sorry. It's just… Could you lend me your shoulder?
As Natsitella started to lean on him, Subaru, while flustering about, rushed to support her. Her slender body was incredibly hot, and Subaru could feel his heart racing from a completely different reason from before. But one look at Natsitella's face and any ideas Subaru may have gotten were blown away. Natsitella was short of breath and looked as though she were in pain. It was as though she was running a high fever.
What happened? Did you suddenly start to feel?
No, it's the mana. You know, right?
Subaru didn't have a clue. He would have liked to fold his arms and declare so in his usual humorous way, but now didn't seem to be the time for that. It was not the weight on Subaru's shoulders that made him decide to stay silent. It was how the entire room had changed its atmosphere, and what was happening at the source of that change. In the center of the room, Reinhard held his sword ready with both hands in a low stance. But that wasn't it. That stance itself had been something that Reinhard had been holding since the battle had begun. However, as Subaru looked on, it felt to him that only now, for the very first time, Reinhard was holding his sword at the ready.
Elsa the Bowel Hunter Granhilda.
Reinhard Banastria from the line of master swordsmen.
The presence of Reinhard's sword overwhelmed the room, and the animosity between Reinhard and Elsa shook the air. In this place turned mostly to ruins, a black-clothed murderer and a lightly armored hero faced each other, and what would clash would be the blood-soaked blade of a knife against a rusted old two-handed sword. But despite the faults of one side's weapon, Subaru held his breath. After declaring their names, both were going to try to end the battle at once. Subaru felt that he was witness to a verse from an epic tale of heroism. Someone screamed out. Subaru couldn't tell if it was Elsa, or Reinhard, or even himself, but a brilliant light blew off the roof of the loot cellar and ripped right through it, cutting the entire space into two halves. Subaru couldn't help but feel that the entire world had shifted as an immense light filled the room and whited everything out in an instant. As the light cleared, the world was subjected to another sudden shift as the displaced space tried to return to where it had been before. Air was distorted as residual waves from the attack swept over the room and caused strong gusts to rush spiraling back into the center of the room. Along with those gusts, stolen items, furniture, and even materials from the building structure itself were pulled in. Subaru desperately tried to protect both Natsitella and Ron from the storm of collateral damage.
Just what is…
Subaru couldn't really explain how all of this was happening, but he knew who caused it. The master swordsman had, at full power, swung his sword. Once. Only once, and this was the result. Subaru kept yelling, trying to get through the pain and the wind, as finally the storm lost its strength and the various items tumbling to the ground signaled its end, along with the chorus of dull creaking sounds from the building. Subaru tossed away the remains of a scroll-like object that had landed on his head and checked that both Ram and Natsatella were still okay. It looked as though Subaru's cover wasn't completely enough, as Ram looked as though he was covered in milk and other things, but Subaru thought he deserved to be cut a little slack.
What do you mean, fighting monsters is my specialty? You're enough of a monster yourself.
Even I get hurt when you say things like that, Subaru.
After all of this, even Reinhard had beads of sweat formed on his cool-looking face, and in his hands.
I'm sorry for pushing you so hard. Rest well.
His two-handed sword disintegrated. Something of such a poor making could not last even one of Reinhard's true swings. The strike was enough to make the steel of the sword's blade rot away. So as for Elsa...
Forget a corpse, I don't even see any trace of her left. This is all just from one swing of your sword?
In the path of Reinhard's attack, which had seemed to rip through the very fabric of the world, there was absolutely nothing left. In the destruction, the counter next to the cellar's entrance was blown completely away with all of its chairs, and the residual waves of damage extended even into the open space in front of the building. The resulting gusts of wind had wrecked the supports of the building, and it seemed ready to collapse at any moment. The space where Elsa had been standing was of course within range of Reinhard's attack, and her tall, black-clothed figure was nowhere to be seen.
But then, that means...
Still unable to quite believe it happened, Subaru turned to look at the silver-haired girl still leaning against him. Natsatella's breathing was still shallow, but when she saw Subaru looking at her, she turned her violet eyes toward him.
Is it over?
Yeah! In the true sense of the word, it looks like it is.
Natsatella ran her fingers through her own hair, and, with still uncertain steps, let go of Subaru while Subaru stared.
Why are you staring at me like that? That's very rude of you.
Your limbs and head are all still attached to your body, right?
Why wouldn't they be? Could you please not say something so ominous?
As Natsatella stared back at Subaru with an annoyed look in her eyes, Subaru gave her a thumbs up and smiled.
That's right. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I, myself, have all my limbs. I don't have a knife stuck in my back or a huge hole in my stomach.
The way you say that, it sounds like you had experienced all of that at one time.
Well, I had. Because of my uselessness, Natsatella had had her life taken, Ram lost his arm and his head, and Felt was cut down too. Now that I think of it, Reinhard, I haven't thanked you yet. You really saved us there. There's also what happened in the alley. Did you hear the screams of my heart or something, my friend?
Well, I certainly would be proud of myself if I could do that, friend.
With his chin, he motioned toward the entrance of the loot cellar. As Subaru followed with his eyes,
Oh, hey.
at the entrance to the loot cellar, which had been at this point pretty much destroyed, was a small blonde-haired girl with a canine tooth poking out from her mouth, hiding in the shadow of one of the few pillars left standing.
That girl over there was running frantically down the street, where she asked me for help. The only reason I was able to come here is because of her. After that, I was just doing my job as a knight.
Is flattening old buildings part of your job description?
Don't you think that's a bit harsh, Subaru?
Despite having dealt this much destruction, the fact that he was acting just as friendly with Subaru as he had before was frightening in and of itself. Natsatella, still trying to regain her footing, had noticed Felt. Subaru stepped between them, running to Felt's defense.
Wait a minute. If she hadn't called Reinhard for help, we both probably wouldn't be here right now. So for my sake, overlook her crimes and please don't turn her into an ice statue.
I wasn't going to do that. And what do you mean, for your sake?
Even in that action of hers, Subaru was able to feel happiness in some way. Since everyone was alive, they could all be joking around.
I guess now it's all up to my negotiation skills, which are something I'd never want to put my trust in.
What is with you? All of a sudden. The way you're flailing about like that is really lame?
In response to Natsatella's words, Subaru put his hand on his chest and reenacted Reinhard's previous reaction. Of course, it didn't look remotely as cool and dignified as when he did it. As Reinhard watched Subaru's antics, he smiled. He raised a hand toward Felt, who was looking in on everyone, and started walking toward her. Subaru watched from behind at Reinhardt's gallant figure as he walked over to Felt, and he couldn't even feel envious of him. Subaru could only shrug his shoulders and think that this was the difference between someone who had it and someone who didn't. Even while Felt was cautious of him, perhaps because she was feeling gratitude that he had come to save everyone, Felt didn't try to run away as Reinhardt approached. Watching the two, Subaru felt like smiling. When
Subaru.
Reinhardt suddenly turned toward him and yelled, and Subaru realized that they hadn't escaped danger yet. Scraps of the building had been thrown up, and underneath them was a black shadow. The black shadow, with black hair trailing behind it and blood dripping from it, kicked firmly off against the ground and accelerated. Holding a blade that was bent out of shape, a bloody Elsa wordlessly raced toward Subaru.
Enough already!
After having somehow survived Reinhardt's incredible strike, Elsa's murderous eyes were filled with a pitch blackness. The murderous intent that she released was greater than any she had before, and it sent chills racing down Subaru's back.
It would only be a few seconds before she was close enough to strike. And in that short amount of time, I set my thoughts racing. One instant and it would all be over. Elsa was counting everything on this one strike. Reinhardt wouldn't make it in time. If I could stop Elsa this one time, Reinhardt could handle the rest. Natsatella didn't even have time to turn around. Where was the target this time? I had experienced this twice before. 2 deaths, the fear and the pain. I would protect her the third time. Protect the girl! She's aiming for your stomach.
Subaru pushed Natsatella out of the way, and using the club from before still in his hands, he guarded his own stomach as Elsa's strike collided with him. The horizontal slice felt less like a cut and more like being struck by a heavy blunt object. The force of the collision swept Subaru off his feet, and he felt the world spin 180 degrees as he vomited blood. It wasn't just his vision, but his entire body that was spinning. Unsure of how far he had been thrown, Subaru struck the wall, unable to catch himself.
There you go. Getting in my way. Aga.
That's enough, Elsa.
As Reinhardt came running up, Elsa understood that there was no longer any meaning in continuing the fight. She threw at Reinhardt her knife, which had been completely bent in that last attack that Subaru took. Her aim was off, but the throw succeeded in drawing Reinhardt's attention away from her, and that was enough.
One day, I will open the stomachs of everyone here, so take care of your bowels for me until then.
It didn't look possible to chase her down as she leapt lightly from roof to roof as she made her getaway. Reinhardt, who was not interested in pursuing this fight any further, didn't run after her. After Reinhardt watched Elsa go, he ran over to the silver-haired girl.
Are you all right?
I'm perfectly fine. Ket, you see? Rather than me, you should be worried about.
Before racing over to the wall with her unsteady feet where Subaru was collapsed upside down.
Are you all right? What were you thinking?
Oh, it's no big deal. If there was ever a time to act before thinking that was it, don't you think? I'm the only one who could move, and I was able to quickly guess where she was going to attack.
Raising one hand to Natsatella as she walked over to him and using the other to carefully touch his tender stomach. He was immensely bruised, and everything under his clothes as he lifted them up was purple. Before turning over and getting back on his feet.
She's completely gone now, right?
I'm sorry, Subaru. This is all my fault for letting my guard down. If you weren't there, we would have been in trouble. If that person there had gotten wounded, then...
Stop! 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 Don't say it! Don't say it! I forbid you to speak any more than that. You're going to steal my thunder. You're going to steal my thunder.
After that, Subaru slowly turned around to face the silver-haired girl looking up at him. She fidgeted and then stood up beside him. They were about 2 steps away from each other. If Subaru reached out with his hand, he could touch her. It had been a long time coming, and Subaru paused to think about everything that had happened for him to get here. As Subaru closed his eyes in silence, the girl looked as though she wanted to say something, but before she could open her mouth, Subaru pointed a finger up to the heavens.
My name is Subaru Natsuki. I know there's a ton of things you want to say and a ton of things you want to ask. But before all of that, let me confirm just one thing.
What?
I totally just saved your life right now from that terrible weapon, didn't I? We okay so far?
Oh, Kai?
It means everything's fine. So, are we okay?
Subaru used his upper body to form an O and a K. And while the silver-haired girl in front of him seemed to twitch a little, she replied,
Ah, okay.
I'm the person who saved your life, your rescuer. Now you are the heroine I rescued. Don't you think that I should get some kind of reward? Don't you think so?
I understand. Only if it's something I'm able to do, though.
As long as you understand. Now I only have just one request of you.
While the girl looked a bit worried in response, she seemed to find her determination and nodded firmly.
So my wish is,
Go on.
Subaru smiled, showing his teeth, then snapped his fingers and then gave a thumbs up, striking a pose.
I want you to tell me your name.
The girl's eyes opened wide in shock, and a moment of silence fell upon the two. Subaru's gaze would not waver, and he looked the silver-haired girl in front of him straight in the eye. The girl then put her hand to her mouth and started to giggle, her white cheeks blushing and her silver hair swaying behind her as she smiled. That smile of hers was not one of resignation or a faint fleeting smile, either. She was simply smiling because she was happy. That was all there was to it.
Amelia?
Hearing that single response, Subaru took in a short breath and then breathed out. In response, the girl straightened herself, put a finger to her lips, and smiled in a teasing sort of way.
My name is Amelia. Just Amelia. Thank you, Subaru. Thank you for saving me.
Looking down at that hand, Subaru hesitantly took it in his. Her fingers and wrist were slender and her palm was small, and her hand was very warm. It was a living hand, with blood running through it.
Thank you for saving me. I wanted to say the same to her. She was the one who had saved me first. With this, I had finally repaid her, after dying 3 times from blade wounds to get here. After all of that pain and suffering, after all that fighting with everything I had, my reward was her name and a smile. Man, that wasn't worth it at all.
That would have been a good place to end the story. However,
Though really, I have to say I'm surprised to see you're all right.
even from the perspective of a man with Reinhardt's skill, Elsa's final attack must have seemed overwhelming. Subaru gently put pressure on his hurt abdomen and pointed to the club lying on the ground. The spiked club was thick and sturdy and had worked well as a shield, even though that was not its true purpose.
I quickly guarded myself with that thing. If it weren't for that, right now I'd be cut in two.
You're right. If it weren't for this,
I wouldn't have been able to avoid bad end for her.
huh?
As Reinhardt picked up the club, part of it slid across a smooth cut going through it and fell to the ground with a thud. Cut completely in two, its service was done. Reinhardt slowly looked up at Subaru with an uncomfortable look on his face. Subaru followed Reinhardt's gaze nervously and pulled up his tracksuit. Just as before, everything was purple and bruised, but there was a slight change. A red line suddenly ran straight across his abdomen.
This doesn't look good. Even I can see what's coming next.
Just as Subaru finished his statement, a searing pain shot through him, and then his stomach opened along the cut, spilling bright red blood everywhere.
I had finally been able to hear her name, and now it looked as though this was going to be the end again. But even if that was the case, I was sure I would return to this place again. My vision shifted sideways and I thought that I must have fallen over. I could see that Reinhardt was panicked as well, and as Amelia looked straight at me close to my face, I could see that she was very distressed. She looks cute even when she's panicking. What a place this fantasy world is. I thought, feeling I had thought something similar before the pain and shock swept my consciousness away like a storm at sea.
Reinhardt looked on from a distance at the faint blue light, its wavelengths those of water, the element of healing, and let out a soft sigh that no one around him could hear. Signs of grief showed on his handsome profile as well as traces of tension left over from the battle. If you were to take the image of his figure as he stood in front of the ruins behind him, it would surely be a masterpiece of art. Such was the way he stood. However, Reinhardt had a deep sense of regret and Hamsha.
All right, that should do it.
Amelia brushed her hand across Subaru's forehead, as if wiping it, and brushed away his hair as he lay propped up against the wall. She made sure that there was still a look of redness, of life in his face. Amelia then stood up and nodded.
I'm done treating him. He's probably made it past the worst of it.
That's good to hear. Now that that's taken care of, Lady Amelia. Due to my shortcomings, I have caused you a great deal of stress. I am prepared to take whatever punishment you deem necessary in response to my failure.
Reinhard placed his sword in front of him as he knelt and apologized for his failings. As a knight, this was the most sincere way he could apologize. No matter what might befall him, Reinhard was prepared to take any punishment without complaint. Emilia, however, stuck out her finger and waved it back and forth, looking annoyed.
I never understand why you all are like that.
Meaning?
You saved us all from grave danger, and everyone made it out alive. Yet here you are, trying to take responsibility for our pain and all of the trouble we went through.
Emilia pointed her finger towards Subaru, who was now sleeping soundly.
That one over there is a lot more honest. He saved me, and then demanded a reward, even if he didn't really ask for much.
Reinhard saw Subaru strike his pose and ask for Emilia's name. As Emilia smiled, remembering that moment, Reinhard couldn't help but smile as well.
So thank you for saving us. That is all I have to say to you. I don't see any fault of yours to punish you for. If that's not enough for you, then work harder next time you save someone.
Understood. Thank you for your kind words.
When the two stood facing together, it was clear that Reinhard was much taller than Emilia, and so when he looked at her, he had to look down at her. Where was that grandness that he sensed from her just moments before?
It must be a difference in the capacity of our characters. Surely Emilia was simply one of those chosen ones.
I just remembered, talking about how you saved us, but how and why did you come here?
Today is my day off, and I was wandering aimlessly about the capital. If I had been patrolling off duty, my squadron leader would have gotten upset at me. So I really was just walking around. But then I met him.
It all began after Reinhard had met Subaru in that alley. As they talked, Subaru had given a description that matched Emilia's and had mentioned some place called the Loot Cellar. With the mixture of this prior and newfound knowledge, Reinhard had also made his way to the slums to investigate. As he was looking around,
Then I ran into that girl over there. And the rest you know.
Yes, that girl.
now that Felt had come up in conversation once more, Emilia turned her eyes to a corner of the open area in front of the loot cellar, where Felt was taking care of Rom, who had yet to wake up. The blonde-haired girl turned around as she felt Emilia stare, and looked down awkwardly.
Lady Emilia, who is that girl?
Reinhard, I appreciate all of your help, and thank you for saving us. However, please, I must ask you to refrain from interfering from here on out.
Emilia closed her eyes, trying to figure out how she would approach Felt. As Reinhard looked at Emilia's beautiful face, he sighed.
I won't ask what's going on, but your safety is very important. I would ask that you take care of yourself. I will send knights to take you home. So please go along with them.
Normally I would have to refuse, but after all of this I suppose there's no helping it. All right, I'll take you up on your offer.
Understood.
Emilia giggled, and when he followed her stare, it landed on Subaru's peacefully resting face.
What relation do you have to him, to Subaru? I just met him.
Reinhard paused, giving her a doubtful and confused look, perhaps because she found Reinhard's reaction amusing. Emilia smiled.
It's the truth. There's no other way to put it. I don't have any memory of meeting Subaru before. The first time I had ever seen him was when I walked into this place not long ago.
But earlier, he said that he was looking for you. He said he had something he wanted to give you. Then there is the fact that he was present here for all of this, and
The fact that he put his life on the line to protect you, Reinhard was about to say, but stopped. He thought that if he said it, he would be belittling the brave act that Subaru had performed.
That's why it's so strange. I'm beginning to think that weirdo is somehow involved in all of this.
please refrain from speaking that way about Provincial Lord Roswell. He is a very upstanding citizen. I will admit that he does have some peculiarities, but
The fact that you linked the word weirdo to him makes it clear what you really think.
my apologies. Please keep this a secret from Lord Roswell.
Of course, of course.
Reinhard then turned the subject back towards Subaru.
What shall we do with him? If you would like, I could have someone from my family take him in as a guest.
No, I'll take him with me. I'll be able to find out more about him that way, and even if he isn't connected to that weirdo, it does not change the fact that he saved my life. But thank you for offering.
With that, Reinhard and Amelia had just about finished all they had to talk about. Afterward, Reinhard would go and send a few knights to escort Amelia back to her residence, and then he would have to start working on cleaning up the aftermath of the battle. As Reinhard looked at the loot cellar that he had destroyed, he closed his eyes before the extent of the damage. As always, he was frustrated that he could not properly control himself. All of this damage was the result of a slight miscalculation of power on his part. If he had been even more careless, he could have leveled an entire block. He needed to be more careful.
What is it that you plan on doing next to deal with the area?
We'll have to declare the area off limits for a while and pass out wanted posters for the Bow Hunter. She is already a person who has a lot of rumors floating around about her, so I'm not sure it will help. But
What about the girl and the old man?
it's hard for me to grasp all that has happened, but given my occupation, I do not think that what they were doing is something that I can just ignore. However, today happens to be my day off. If I might add another thing, if there's no victim filing a complaint, then the lack of evidence makes it hard to convict. But above all else, it's really hard for me to grasp what happened.
You really are a terrible knight.
Well, that is the truth. Despite everyone calling me the knight among knights.
Finally, after all the laughing had subsided, Amelia's thoughts were in order. She walked toward the blonde-haired girl who was still hugging the old man beside her. When she noticed Amelia coming, she looked up, prepared to face her.
Is this old man your family?
Felt looked shocked. Of all the things she had expected to hear, that was not one of them. Even Reinhard, who didn't know what had happened between the two, could tell that they were not on particularly good terms. Felt scratched her cheek and tried to regain her composure, and then, as if trying to hide her embarrassment, she slapped Rom a few times. She slapped Rom a few times.
It's kinda like that. To me, Old Man Rom is like my only, grandfather figure sort of thing.
I see. I only have one family member as well. He's always sleeping when it counts, and when he's awake, I don't think I could ever say that to him.
Well, I can't say these sort of things when Rom's awake, either.
Reinhard couldn't be sure, but it looked as though the intensity of Felt's slaps was increasing. She probably wasn't paying attention. The frequency was also increasing, and the old man's white bald head was turning red. Felt then looked up at Amelia with a weak light in her red eyes.
I was sure you were going to be angry at me.
Well, that might have happened if things were as they were before, but I don't feel like I have it in me anymore. So while only a little bit, I'll forgive you for his sake.
Felt looked at Amelia, then at Subaru, and then looked down before quietly saying,
I'm sorry. He saved my life, too. I can't be so ungrateful as to ignore that. I'll return what I stole.
Good. That makes things easier on me. I really would feel bad if I had to sick this guy over here on you.
After hearing those words and looking at that young man with the red hair and blue eyes, Felt grimaced.
The knight among knights. I would have to be crazy to try to run away with someone like that on my tail. It's the first time I've ever seen anyone faster than me. It really surprised me.
Upon hearing those words, Reinhard just smiled back at Felt wordlessly. With a slight click of her tongue, Felt stood up and walked over to Amelia, who stood up as well.
All right, I'll give it back. If it's that important to you, make sure you hide it better so it doesn't get stolen again.
That warning feels a little strange coming from you. If possible, I would like it if you stopped your thievery altogether.
That's something I cannot do. Just so you know, I'm only returning this to you this time because I owe my life to you all. I don't think I did anything wrong, and I have no plans to stop.
Felt put on a strong-willed smile. Considering Felt's age, it was almost painful to watch. As Felt declared her intentions, Reinhard looked on in silence. Given his occupation, Reinhard knew that this was not something he should overlook, but what other way of life did she have? What right did he have to talk of justice without offering her any alternatives? Reinhard had seen enough of the capital to not be so naive as to ignore that fact. Amelia seemed to realize this as well, and after lowering her eyes for a few moments, she stuck out her hand without another word. Anise P.
Understood.
I was asking for too much.
If I was able to eat without having to work for it, I might quit, but that's not happening. Anyway, here you go.
Felt reached out to put the thing she had taken out of her pocket into Amelia's hand, to give back what she had stolen. For an instant, Reinhard saw a flash of red cross in front of his eyes. That bright light was something he had seen before, and as he narrowed his eyes, Reinhard searched through the sea of his memories for it. Then, after he had found what he was looking for...
Huh?
Reinhard?
He reached out and grabbed Felt's hand, still holding onto the badge. Both girls looked up in surprise at Reinhard, but when they saw his serious expression, both fumbled for words.
That hurts. Let go.
However, Reinhard did not loosen his grip. The strength in his hand was such that if he wanted to, he could bend steel. Even if he wasn't using his full strength, it was not something that a slender girl like Felt could shake away from.
I don't believe it.
Upon hearing those words, Amelia responded, her eyes trembling.
Wait, Reinhard. I understand that it is hard to let her off without a word, but she didn't realize how much this badge is worth. Plus, I do not find fault with her. It was my fault that I let it get stolen in the first place.
You're mistaken, Lady Amelia. That's not what I have a problem with.
Reinhard stared intently at Felt so much that he had already forgotten how rude he just was to Amelia. As Felt looked back at the young man with hair as red as her eyes, those red eyes of hers wavered with anxiety.
What is your name?
It's F. Felt.
What is your surname? How old are you?
I am an orphan. All right. I don't have a surname, and I think I'm about 15 years old. I don't know my own birthday. But enough about that. Here me go.
As Felt spoke, she seemed to regain a bit of her composure and tried to wrestle herself away from him. Reinhard kept his firm hold on Felt and then turned to look at Amelia.
Lady Amelia, I am no longer able to fulfill your request. I'm taking this girl with me.
May I ask why? If the reason has anything to do with this badge?
That is certainly not a crime I would like to ignore. But considering the far greater crime it would be to watch this moment before me unfold without any action, it is a trivial matter.
Amelia furrowed her brow in both hesitation and confusion. But Reinhard accepted Amelia's confusion. He felt that there was no helping it. After all, this was something she was used to. It would be cruel to tell her to realize what was happening.
You're coming with me. I'm sorry, but I can't let you refuse.
What are you, crazy? Just because you saved me doesn't mean you can just... Huh?
Just as Phelps was about to continue yelling at Reinhard, her body went limp. As the power drained from her body, Phelps glared at Reinhard until the very end, finally saying,
Burn in hell. Damn it!
before her head drooped and she fell unconscious.
That's again not a very knightly thing for you to do. If you do it that roughly, it's going to leave lasting effects on the gate.
Fortunately, this is something I've had to live with all my life, so I understand how to keep everything in moderation. Lady Amelia, I believe you'll hear again from me soon. Please understand.
Reinhard gently took Amelia's badge out of Phelps' limp hand and gave it to her. The dragon on the badge was, in fact, the state symbol of the dragon kingdom of Lugunica. In Reinhard's hand, the red jewel shone with a dull light, but when it was returned to Amelia's hands, it shone bright, as if delighted to be back in the hands of its owner.
I ask that you take good care of Subaru.
Feeling Phelps' light weight in his arms, Reinhard brushed her blonde hair away from her forehead. When she was unconscious like this and didn't have to be so on guard, her white face looked both innocent and charming. If she were given a change of clothes and a bath, surely she would shine. A strong wind blew and Reinhard's bangs danced in front of his face. Through those bangs, Reinhard looked up at the sky and saw floating in the twilight above the capital, the moon. It was a full moon that shone with a bluish-white light, and its beauty was both allure.
This may be the last time I can look up at the moon and feel at ease.
Re-Zero by Teppei Nakatsuki. Want to create an audiobook like this yourself? Try artale.ai. Now sit back and enjoy the story.
Wide web to print with a... Why don't we give this a shot and show everyone what you're made of? Really? I can't thank Mr. Ikamoto enough. Despite us both being adults, we would go into a fried pork joint and, while pouring each other's sauce over our cabbage, argue over points such as whether to add tan to the heroine's name and other, at the time, meaningless seeming talk. But it was because all of that my story became a book, and in the joy of that result, I can now look back on those times as good memories. Thank you very much. I also need to thank Mr. Otsuka, who, despite having such a busy schedule, was able to complete illustrations for the book at an incredibly fast pace. After each and every illustration was completed, I would squirm with such excitement that I would give myself Charlie horses as my legs cramped up. As the number of characters will be increasing from here on out, I absolutely cannot wait to see more. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank everyone in the editing department, my proofreaders, people in the industry, and everyone who contributed to this work. This work appearing in print form was the result of the efforts of very many people. I couldn't have done it without you. I intend to work hard so that we may continue working together for a long time. Now, finally, I would like to thank everyone that picked up this book and everyone who continued to support this work on Let's Become Novelists. May we meet again in the next volume, Ray? Life in a Different World from 0 to...
February 2013, Tape Nabetsuki.